Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. Thank you for coming to this evening's monthly meeting of the Poway Unified School District. Today is Thursday, October 11th, and it is 2 minutes after 6. I'd like to ask everybody to join me and please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Great, thank you very much. Mr. Sellers, please report out a closed session.
Closed session began at 4:08 p.m. Board of Education took the following action in closed session. Item 2.1-A, in the matter of pending existing litigation case number TC-17-29, on a motion by O'Connor-Radcliffe, second by Patel, Board voted to approve a settlement agreement for the amount of $55,000 to resolve a tort claim and release the district from all claims and liability pertaining to this matter. Item 2.1-B, on the previous item 2.1-A, the vote was unanimous. On item 2.1-B, there was no reportable action. On item 2.1-C, there was no reportable action. Item 2.1-D1, in the matter of pending existing litigation case number OAH 2018-070-282, on a motion by O'Connor-Radcliffe and a second by Beatty, the board voted to approve a final settlement in the amount of $14,500. The vote was unanimous. Item 2.1-D2, in the matter of pending existing litigation case number OAH 2018-070770, on a motion by O'Connor-Radcliffe and a second by Patel, the board voted to approve a final settlement of $15,000. That vote was unanimous. Item 2.1-D3, in the matter of pending existing litigation case number SA6, on a motion by Patel and a second by Sellers, the board voted to approve a final settlement of $24,000. That vote was unanimous. Item 2.1-D4, in the matter of pending existing litigation case number OAH 2018-050-495, on a motion by Zane and a second by Beatty, the board voted to approve a final settlement of $5,500. That vote was unanimous. Item 2.4-A, there was no reportable action. Closed session was adjourned at 5:37 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Sellers. Let the record reflect all members in attendance this evening. And at this time, I'd like to ask Board Member Schwartz to welcome the public.
Welcome to the monthly meeting of the Board of Education. If you'd like to address the board on any agenda item, please complete a speaker's slip. All requests to speak must be submitted to the clerk of the board before the agenda item comes up. If you are requesting an agenda item be pulled for public discussion from Section 5.0 Consent Calendar, a speaker's slip must be submitted to the clerk now, as approval of the consent calendar is one of the first items up for approval. Item 4.2 is placed on our agenda to enable members of our community to bring items that are not placed anywhere else on the agenda to the board's attention. Speaking time is limited to 3 minutes per speaker with a maximum of 15 minutes per topic unless waived by the board president. There will be a 30-second yellow warning light when time is running out. Speakers may only speak on one topic under item 4.2 and may not defer their speaking time to another individual. If there are concerns regarding specific individuals, it is preferred that the speaker refrain from naming them publicly to respect their privacy. The board will accept and review any written materials that would provide more specific information. The Brown Act does not permit board action or extended discussion of any item not on the agenda, but your concerns will be referred to staff. With that said, welcome and thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schwartz. That brings us to item 3.5, approval of agenda sequence. Are there any suggested changes to the agenda sequence? Okay. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Mr. Sellers?
Second.
Dr. Patel, second. Mr. Schwartz, preferential vote? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. This is to item 4.1, student board member reports. And I would like to call student board representative reports. And I will begin with Billy Santos from Abraxas High. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Ready? Go ahead. Hello, and thank you for allowing me to present to the board. My name is Billy Santos. We have two programs at Abraxas High School, the diploma program and the transition program. I am a student in the transition program. The transition program is for young adults 18 to 22 who learn important life skills at Abraxas and in the community. The students in the transition program continue to develop their mobility skills using MTS in the community to get to and from their job sites, make purchases at grocery stores, and improve their overall independence. The students have begun working and volunteering at a variety of job sites in the community, such as Kambinski's Barbecue, Walgreens, PowayUSD District Office, Armstrong Garden Center, to name a few. The diploma program ended its first quarter on September 20 and started their second quarter today. This leadership club continues to work with Brookview Senior Center and with the North City Church Food Bank. The leadership club also hosted its first blood drive of the year. TJ Hunt, a popular YouTuber, visited the campus and encouraged students to pursue their passions. The construction program is now offering a pre-apprenticeship program that is open to all students in the district who may be interested in learning about and exploring the construction trades. The first pre-apprenticeship class started today. Students from both the diploma and transition programs participate in the Abraxas Garden project. The Abraxas Garden continues to donate the majority of the produce to needy families in our community. In addition, the Abraxas Garden produce is now available to the public at a monthly fundraiser farmers market in the patio next to Elements Cafe at the district office. These events have been a huge success and have allowed both diploma and transition students to learn skills in running a small business. Thank you for your time.
Nice job. Thank you so much. Next will be Delaney Anderson from Del Norte High School.
Thank you. Good evening, board members and all in attendance. My name is Delaney Anderson, and I'll be speaking on behalf of Del Norte High School. I would like to touch on the ways Del Norte will continue to be college-ready, future-focused, and globally aware. College-ready. Things are in full swing for our 2019 graduating class. Our counselors are working very hard to keep all of our seniors on track for success in the application process, including holding workshops once a week to help fine-tune applications and submissions. In addition, academically, the juniors and sophomores and even some freshmen participated in the PSAT yesterday, and we are confident they all did a fantastic job. In all, we had over 1,200 students participating in this year's PSAT. Future focused. There have been numerous activities for our leadership groups on campus lately. First, ASB attended the CATA retreat 2 weeks ago and experienced an atmosphere where leaders from all over San Diego came eager to develop their leadership abilities. Secondly, our Peer Leaders Uniting Students, referred to as PLUS, held a retreat along the coast and had a great bonding experience. Link Crew expanded the opportunities around including our freshmen by holding a conference on our campus last week. We continued to push the idea of a campus inclusivity by putting on a Start with Hello week, where we had a guest speaker and each student received a t-shirt as a reminder. We are hoping to see our students proudly wear them throughout the year. Last week, we had several students attend the ADL No Place for Hate conference. And in addition, in just a couple of weeks, we'll be promoting Red Ribbon Week, along with countless other schools nationwide. Overall, our students are excited that we are now officially halfway through our first trimester. Globally aware, we are striving to be inclusive with respect to our diverse campus. A handful of our ASB students attended the No Place for Hate training conference and are looking forward to rolling out a No Place for Hate school. Our recycling club is active and excited about preserving our world through recycling. They are looking to push our recycling habits to the school and beyond by promoting its importance. Last but not least, the HOSA Future Health Professionals will be putting on a blood drive for our campus to help save lives. On a completely separate note, ASB is extremely excited to bring a homecoming week, including float building, a wonderful football game halftime show, and if you aren't doing anything next Friday morning, a parade that is open to the community. Our dance-themed A Walk Down the Red Carpet is a little over a week away, and we are expecting over 1,000 in attendance. Besides the memories, of course, we are excited that Homecoming Week gives our leadership students the opportunity to deal with real-life experiences. This includes communicating with community members for resources, delegation between peers, and being responsible for a largely populated event. It's great to be distinctively Del Norte. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Tyler Vandenberg from Mount Carmel High.
Good evening, PowayUSD School Board. My name is Tyler Vandenberg, and I'm very excited to share with all of you what our incredible Sun Devils have been up to so far. To start off this 2018-2019 school year, our amazing staff and link crew welcomed all the incoming students with a red carpet and tunnel showing them the Sun Devil way. While link crew was hosting freshman orientation, our ASB hung up welcome back sticky notes for every single student to brighten up their first day. That Friday was our first home game, where we showcased this year's Red Sea by over 850 students running through the tunnel onto the field. It was truly a sight to see. To show the freshmen how awesome it is in the Red Sea, every year the freshmen get into the first home game for free, and they all walk up from the gym together showing off their Sun Devil pride. The following week, KUSI came to our Incredibles-themed alarm clock prep rally, where we introduced this year's varsity fall season sports, played some awesome games, and showed everyone what being a Sun Devil is all about. You can even watch part of the pep rally at KUSI PPR. On September 21st, we had our annual homecoming game against San Marcos, where we showcased our amazing Pixar-themed floats. The seniors won with an incredible Toy Story float, juniors took third with Up, sophomores took second with Cars, and last but not least, the freshmen had a great Monsters Inc. float. The following night, we had over 900 excited students to get down and groovy in our own gym. This was the biggest turnout in 13 years. In other news, our PTSA has been hard at work creating a great parent experience with events like Back to School Night, Senior Parent Orientation, and the new Parent Boot Camp. 2 weeks ago, we took part in the amazing Start With Hello campaign, where we passed out over 2,000 Hello stickers in support of the Sandy Hook Promise. It is extremely important to all of us at Mount Carmel that we create a culture of inclusion that values everyone who comes onto our campus. Along with the Hello stickers, we passed out Forever stickers reminding everyone that they will always be a Sun Devil. We recently sent 10 students and 2 staff members to the No Place for Hate conference, and we are so excited for them to share and put into action everything they learned. Coming up, we have our last home game tomorrow night against RB, and in the works is our fall play, DOA. I'm so excited to share with everyone all the great things to come. Thank you for listening, and remember, it's great to be a Sun Devil.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item 4.2, public comments. Mr. Sellers.
The first speaker is Chloe Rogers.
Good evening. Thank you, board and members of the audience and of the school board. My name is Gracie Monroe. I'm one of the assistant stage managers at Poway High School's fall play, You Can't Bring It With You. I brought 3 of our favorite characters tonight, Alice Sycamore and her fiance Tony, and our favorite elderly friend, who happens to be a little tipsy tonight, so please forgive her, Gay Wellington.
Hi everyone, I'm Alice Sycamore, and we would like to invite you all to come see our play You Can't Take It With You. It's taking place October 25th, 26th, and 27th at 7 p.m. and October 27th at 2 p.m. at the Poway Center for the Performing Arts.
Hi, my name is Tony. Tickets will be sold at the door and are $12 for students, staff members, and for military and seniors, and they're $14 for adults.
Hello, my name is Gay Wellington, and this show is best suited for children of 12 and older for many reasons.
We hope you can come see it and just watch our love story unfold. There are talents displayed such as ballet dancing, xylophone playing, and everyone's favorite, tax embezzlement.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
The next speaker is Kevin Juza.
Good evening, Dr. Phelps, Board of Trustees, Cabinet, and the POSD community. My name is Kevin Juza. As many of you know, I'm currently running for the open seat on the Board of Trustees for Area B. It has been a great opportunity to run and represent Area B, which is Northeast Rancho Bernardo and North Poway. In general, the community likes the district model that ensures the representation and the board into the future. Being a parent of twin daughters going to Twin Peaks Middle School and a past foundation president at Turtleback Elementary School, I have a great opportunity. I have great optimism of the direction the school district is going. It will be an honor to work for and represent the kids and parents of Area B. I look forward to bringing the school board to keep the kids first. I have heard many candidates and officials say that they put kids first, and I look forward to ensuring the voice of the students will be heard. Here are a few ideas and opportunities as the board can listen to and hear what the students have to say. They would love good water. They would love filtered water, cool, able to fill their water bottles. They fundraise, but I think there's a policy that we could look at to make it come true. Additionally, students support the additional counseling the students to bring the skills of addressing any anxiety and just the overall emotional balance of growth is having the counselors there on site and more accessible. They would like to have more funds for athletic support and other after-school academic programs. I agree with the students, and after-school athletics and academic programs build character, reinforce what they learn in the classroom, and build community and friendship. I'd like to also shout out to all the middle schoolers who are driving to Walnut, California tomorrow for a cross-country meet. I don't know if you know this, but Twin Peaks has 9% of all their student body running cross-country. And if you look at all the middle schools, they all have a team, and I think it counts over 500 students actually involved in cross-country, a lifelong support that I wish I would have grabbed on when I was younger. I think if we truly listen to the kids and put them first, we can address these and many more into the future. I believe our future is bright, and I believe our days are better to come in the future. I appreciate your time.
Last speaker is Stan Rodkin.
Good evening. Stan Rodkin, Rancho Penasquitos. At the September meeting, I raised the issue of the danger of using Roundup as a weed control, and I handed a large clipping on that subject to one of your staff members. I expected a response from someone, either up or down, either you're using it or you're not. I didn't get any. In the interim, I spoke to the person who alerted me to that issue, and she tells me, and I want to be very, very clear here, no allegations, hearsay, no corroborating evidence. She told me it is in use at Monterey Ridge. Now, admittedly, the man who received the multi-million-dollar award may have overused it, used it for a long period of time, misused it, but I think that it's probable that different people have different levels of susceptibility to getting cancer from that chemical. And I think it's also probable that young students, kids in school, may have even higher levels of susceptibility. So I think it's extremely important to find out, is it being used or is it not being used? Is it board policy or district policy to use Roundup as weed control throughout the district, or has someone possibly found a way to skirt the system and get it in there and use it? and I think is very important to the safety of all students, all teachers, all other supporting staff, to find out whether it is being used, and if it is, to put a stop to it. Thank you very much for your time.
That's it for public speakers and public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Sellers. This brings us to item 4.3, information presentation item, report on district results from the spring 2018 California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress. Associate Superintendent Osborne.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight it is our pleasure to present information on our student performance on the spring 2018 Smarter Balanced Assessment. I'd like to bring our executive directors, Doug Johnson and Todd Casson, up to provide a brief overview of our student achievement results, which will also include our continued efforts to strengthen student learning and deep understanding in the areas of mathematics and English language arts. While they're transitioning, I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge and thank Linda Maloney and her team in our Testing and Assessment Office. This dedicated team ensures that all testing, data, and communication with schools and families happens in a timely fashion. We're grateful for their support, and now I will turn it over to Doug Johnson and Todd Casson.
Thank you, Ms. Osborne. Good evening, Dr. Phelps, President Zane, members of the board, our Poway Unified staff, and members of the public. My name is Todd Casson, and with me tonight is my good friend and member of our Learning Support Services team, Mr. Doug Johnson. We'd like to thank you for providing us with the opportunity to share our student results from last spring's Smarter Balance Assessments, which are one part of the California Assessment for Student Performance and Progress System. As we begin our presentation, I ask that we take a quick look back at how our students performed on these assessments in 2017. As you can see, student scores are broken down into one of 4 performance levels, ranging from standard not met all the way to exceed standards. By combining the top 2 performance levels, we can find the percentage of students meeting the proficient performance levels set by the state of California. For 2018, that number was 74.29% in English language arts, which equates to 13,950 of our students, and 67.32% in mathematics, which is equivalent to 12,650 students.
This is our 4th year that our students have been assessed with Smarter Balance summative assessments, which use California's challenging academic standards and ask students to write clearly, think critically, and solve complex problems, as they will need to do in college and 21st century careers. Smarter Balance tests consist of 2 parts, a computer adaptive assessment and a performance task. The computer adaptive assessment bases follow-up questions on students' answers in real time. If a student answers a question correctly, they get a more difficult question. If they answer it incorrectly, they get an easier question. The performance task challenges students' ability to apply their knowledge and skills to problems in a real-world setting. The 2 parts measure depth of understanding, writing, research, and problem-solving skills. Students are tested at grades 3 to 8 and 11. In both ELA and mathematics, over 97% of our eligible students participated in state testing, with a state target being 95%. Overall, 392 PUSD parents opted their students out of state testing. The greatest number occurred at the middle school level at 176. We also had a number of parents of students with disabilities opt out their child. This chart displays data over a 3-year span of Smarter Balance testing from 2015-16 to 2017-18 school years. One can note that more of our students are performing at the target levels than in the county and state. The performance at the target levels remain relatively consistent for the state, county, and PUSD. In English language arts and mathematics, in comparison to the 2017 testing, more of our students performed at the target level than previous years in grades 3 to 7. In fact, our largest gain in English language arts and mathematics came in grade 7. There was a decrease in the number of students performing at the proficient bands in 8th and 11th grades in both subject areas. A significant data point revealed in this year's Smarter Balanced Summative Assessment data were the gains reported in the number of students performing at the exceeds standards level. This positive trend aligns with our district's commitment to differentiate instruction for all students, including our advanced students.
Although our numbers for PUSD are reported for the entire district, we felt it was important to display how our district is performing at all 3 levels. At the elementary level, you can see a 2% gain in the number of students proficient in both English language arts and mathematics. At our middle schools, our scores remained consistent in English language arts, but we did see a 2% increase in mathematics. In transitioning to our 11th grade students, you can see that our scores reflect a drop of 5% in English language arts and 4% in mathematics. To see our scores decrease at any level is concerning to our entire PUSD team, and currently we are working with our high school principals and students that participated in the assessment to develop a set of best practices to address both student and staff concerns that are being brought forward. These include timing, placement, and structure of the CASP exam schedule in regards to other high-stakes exams for students that includes advanced placements, SAT, and the ACT. Student engagement and buy-in, both before, during, and after the exam cycle. I would also add, in hearing from our 11th grade students, it is clear that the spring term is an extremely busy one, and we must continue to consider all of the commitments our students have when planning for a successful CASP exam cycle.
As we turn our attention to English language arts, in this area, in the student demographic groups displayed, the data remained relatively consistent in comparison to the 2017 testing. The data shared on this slide is also consistent with our overall district performance. However, we are pleased to report an increase in our Native American population and our 2 or more races student groups. We continue to examine our instructional practices with our special designated student groups as we move more of our students to the target levels. A 4% increase in the number of students moving to the proficient achievement bands in our students who are economically disadvantaged was reported. In breaking down achievement descriptors of the exam, 87% of our students performed at the near or above scale score ranges in reading, writing, and research inquiry claims. In response to the reported data, this year we will focus on the following ELA initiatives. Universal screening at first grade to identify students who need extra support in a very early time in their education through the SIPS program. Systematic instruction in phonological awareness, phonics, and sight words. Our TK through second grade teachers, including special educators, are continuing to participate in the PUSD Reading Academy that focuses on the 5 key components of reading instruction. This year, we are in full implementation and utilizing our guaranteed, viable ELA/ELD benchmark advanced literacy curriculum in grades K to 5. As a system, we are continuing to deepen our teachers' understanding of our response to intervention system and structure to support the special educational needs of our students through a multi-tiered approach. Additionally, throughout the year, principals are collaborating with one another in learning walks at school sites. The focus of these walks is to calibrate the level of rigor and thinking work in ELA tasks.
In mathematics, we observed a similar trend as English language arts with consistent student groups performance recorded in comparison to 2017, with the exception of our Hawaiian Pacific Islander student group improving by 11%. In reference to these data points, we continue to focus on our individual student groups in order to implement instructional practices that support the academic needs of our students. As noted in this slide, both our Native American and 2 or more races grew at 8% and a 2% rate. As an English Language Arts, an additional 5% of students in our economically disadvantaged student group performed in the Proficient Achievement bands. Consistent performance was noted in other designated student groups as well. In breaking down the achievement descriptors of the exam, on average, 84% of our students performed in the near or above standard scale scored ranges. These claims include concepts and procedures, problem solving and data analysis, and communicating reasoning. In deepening our mathematics work for the year, teachers are continuing to integrate additional math performance tasks into their lessons to focus on mathematical reasoning and problem solving. We are entering year 5 of the CMP3 state-aligned curriculum in middle school, while at the high school we are entering our 3rd year of an integrated mathematics curriculum. At the middle and high schools, an emphasis on utilizing formative assessments will continue to be a focus as well as engaging our students in mathematical discourse. This year's 11th graders will be the first high school class to be tested in the Smarter Balanced Assessments, who have been taught a math curriculum in an integrated pathway from grades 7 to 11. As reported in the area of English Language Arts, throughout the 2018 and 19 school year, principals are collaborating with one another in learning walks at school sites. The focus of these walks is to calibrate the levels of rigor and critical thinking in our mathematical tasks.
There are a variety of ways to look at data. In analyzing the year-to-year Smarter Balance information from the state of California, the data compares different groups of students' performance from year to year. The next 4 slides reflect cohort reports displaying student performance of the same group of students who have consistently attended a PUSD school over a 4-year period in ELA and mathematics. As denoted, these groups of students improved on their aggregate scaled score performance over the course of the 4 years. Note that in order to be considered to be in the MET achievement level, student scale scores must improve to align with the increasingly higher MET cut score range listed below the chart. The first cohort report depicts last year's 7th grade class's progression over time in English Language Arts. This particular chart shows a steady progress of last year's 7th graders in mathematics over time. As a collective group, average performance was in the MET achievement levels consistently. In the perspective of last year's 8th grade class, one can note a slight regression in the rate of progress from 7th to 8th grade in English Language Arts, although in all 4 years, on average, performance was reported to be in the MET achievement band. Finally, while in math, last year's 8th grade class demonstrated consistent growth over time at a relatively equal rate. And again, still in the MET category of the achievement bands. At the September 29th Professional Day for all teachers throughout the district, sites spent time analyzing their individual school site student performance data. From this process, sites developed school-wide goals, grade level, and student group goals for the year. These goals will serve as a catalyst for the work at the sites and will be published in the yearly Single Plan for Student Achievement document that is submitted to the board and displayed on each school's website. In addition, throughout the year, teachers and administrators continue to monitor student progress on a number of assessments that help provide formative instructional information for teachers via scheduled professional learning time. The goal is to continue to build capacity of our professionals at the school site in order to provide optimal learning environments and structures to meet the individual needs of our students.
I have no doubt in which we would all agree that there is still important work to do in order to meet the needs of all our students. Though as we review these results in combination with the multiple measures we use to track student performance and progress, we are pleased with what we see from the students in the Poway Unified School District. We thank you for your time. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much. Mr. Schwartz.
I just wanted to, well, first I think we're doing a great job of getting the test scores that we need. But I wanted to respond to the dropping that we saw in the high school level. And I want to say that it was for the reasons that you had mentioned about being too busy, the timing of it, and I can speak to my school individually where the actual timing of the day, where it was at 10 a.m., everyone decided to sleep in, and there wasn't that motivation to really take those tests where it was as important. And I believe it really can be advertised better of the importance of how it will affect the students directly if that's spread to all students. And if they understand that, then they'll be more motivated to take part in the tests and not opt out. But I believe that we're on the right path and great work has been done, so good job.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. I appreciate it.
Yes.
So you're saying the science for 12th graders at 10 a.m.?
Yes, that's coming. 12th grade science. Yes.
Dr. Patel.
Any other questions? No.
Ms. Beatty.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. So I had a question about the economically disadvantaged subgroup. We've got a ways to go. Although there was some improvement in each category, the ELA and the mathematics, 21 to 25% below the school-wide average. So we get targeted funds, those supplemental dollars that come in exactly for that group. So are we reassessing how we're allocating those precious dollars to make sure that we're providing the right kinds of supports for those students so they can catch up?
In fact, we are currently we are looking at EDY plans that principals are submitting to our office, and really in a discerning manner looking at how our RTI processes are impacting the success of these students as we move along. I think what I love about our RTI approach is that we have been consistent in this approach for a number of years. We have RTI TOSAs that are continuing to move in their knowledge about effective practices and metrics that we can follow. And that has been done by keeping it on that same track. So we are continuing to look at what is working, why is it working, and then trying to model after those effective practices therein.
I would also add that every single year those plans are analyzed with the site leaders. As they're developed and they go through the year, they are analyzed for success when we look at the end.
Mm-hmm. And I would just add conversely what's not working.
Correct.
And then discontinuing that as well.
Completely agree.
Sometimes
Absolutely.
it's hard to pull back
Yes.
on.
Yes.
It was a good question from Ms. Beatty. I think to add to that, I know that their state is offering some grants to help support some of the groups that don't typically receive concentration funds, like some of our minority groups.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to see if we can get that grant money. I think we've talked about that, Ms. Osborne. So maybe that'll also help us with our other groups that don't get supplemental dollars. I do have a question about some of these statistics, looking at from 2015-16 up to 2017-18. Do you know whether there were any significant changes in the test itself, in the format, the types of questions? Because I know we just rolled this out a few years ago, so I know they're constantly making modifications to the test itself. And were there any significant ones that would have impacted the way they're assessed, scored, or something like that?
That is a constant endeavor that I know that at the state they are looking at the smarter balance items. And one of the reasons why the delay happened was they had a question in 8th grade that was very, very difficult, and they decided they needed to pull that out. And so then they recalibrated the results of our 8th graders throughout the state. So it is an ebb and flow of looking at items, assessing what they truly are assessing, and then moving forward with the next round of testing therein.
Mr. Conor Radcliffe.
I just have a few comments. First, I'm disappointed that our achievement gap, although we in some measures are making progress in our achievement gaps, not in here. The few where we are, I'm wondering, although clearly significant for the 33 Native American students and a couple other categories, is that number significant enough for the state? Or does that count as too low a percentage for them to really give us credit for that 8% growth?
Native Americans will not be on the dashboard, right?
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
The population's too small. Yeah.
Okay. And my last question on this, students receiving special education, clearly the very lowest. Are these the students who took the test without any modifications?
No, these were with modifications.
Or with modifications.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the alternative test
This
then?
is not the alternative. That's not included in these scores.
Okay,
They're
so these
only
are the
Smarter
students who
Balance.
took the
Smarter Balance assessment with
Okay.
their particular appropriate accommodations along the way.
So do we have any data on the students who took the alternative
Not
assessment?
Not as of yet.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
So a related inverse question to Mr. Conor Radcliffe. Within the African American subgroups and the decrease in 1%, is that a significant enough decrease for the state to, is there a range? Do we have to fall more than 1% before they give more money, or where does that fall?
That's, again, a dashboard situation, because when we get the report from the student groups on the dashboard in December, that calculation is determined by the change in the number of students' scale scores at the entry point. Like on that one slide, it shared the range. That's how that's calculated. So they're going to be looking at what was the average scale score of that particular population, and did it change in the process. And that's how we will be allocated. I believe now we have a new, it's not going to be the colors, it's going to be a little dial or something like that. So it's a new measure. Yes.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
That brings us to item 5.1, approval of the consent calendar. And I'll start down at the end of the line and ask if there are any items that board members wish to have pulled for further consideration. Beginning with Mr. Schwartz. Mr. Conor Radcliffe. Ms. Beatty.
5.3A.
5.3A. Mr. Sellers.
5.3B.
5.3B. Dr. Patel.
Nothing to pull.
And I have nothing else to pull. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar with the exception of items 5.3A and 5.3B?
Motion to approve.
A motion to approve by Mr. Conor Radcliffe, second by Ms. Beatty. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Preferential board vote on that was an aye. All right, great, thank you. Unanimous. That'll take us right to 5.3A. Associate Superintendent Little.
Yes, thank you, President Zane. This is our monthly request to approve and ratify contract services for the board's consideration. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Ms. Beatty.
I had two items, and one I had received some information on. That's number 3, or I'm sorry, number 7, the secure transportation. So thank you for the additional information with regard to that. I did look at the contract, and the contract says $200 a day for the term of the school year. I believe the contract was signed back in January, so I don't know if we're approving the contract in arrears. January of 2018, I think. But I think I calculated 180 days times 200, and that would be about 36,000. So if this were a student who attended every day of the school year, the maximum amount of cost would be 36,000. So I'm wondering why it's at 45 and if that can be reduced.
Sorry about that. We can certainly reduce it. I think staff was anticipating additional students perhaps being added to the contract, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm not sure if Mr. Purvis is here, but I think in the past we've had more than one student being accommodated by this particular carrier. So we did the same math as you and got $36,000 for a full school year, right? And then we just built in a buffer in case there were additional students who would need additional transportation throughout this year. Would you have anything to add, Mr. Purvis, to that? Not to put you on the spot, thank you.
He's used to it.
That's correct. We started with 2 students in March of last school year, and through the beginning of this school year fell to 1 student at this time. So it's somewhat of a guessing game, but we believe that would be sufficient. We could lose that 1 student at any moment and be able to cancel the contract.
And this was a contract that was put into that was signed January 18th or January of 2018 and of this year. So this is a continuation of that same contract.
Yes, the continuation of that contract, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
And the second is number 9. This is Southern California Relief Approved Attorney Services for Claims. Normally, back in June, we approved a $2 million premium for Southern California Relief for the insurance coverage for claims for the district's legal defense. And so I'm wondering what this contract is for. I went and took a look at the contract. It looked like this is for pre-approved attorneys, but the attorneys aren't affiliated with Southern California Relief, and we usually give the attorneys their separate contracts as we did back in June.
Sorry. Our reasoning for listing the contract through Southern California. So you're right. The $2 million was for the property and liability insurance premium as well as the administration of those services through our JPA Southern California Relief. The list of attorneys that are provided by the JPA are designated and determined and assigned by the JPA. So the contracts are actually held with the JPA. So we don't contract with the individual attorneys on that list. On the other hand, we're on the hook for the first $50,000 of every claim. So that's why the associated PO with this contract is in the name of the attorney to whom we're paying for the legal services. So that was our reasoning for doing it this way.
Respectfully, the district's never done that before. Last June, the board authorized the specific contracts for the JPA approved attorneys. Tenter Sherman received a $45,000 contract, a pre-approved SoCal Relief attorney or law firm. Walsh & Associates received a separate contract approval of $10,000. Winnett, Patrick, and Weaver received an $80,000 legal service. All of these were legal services for Southern California Relief approved attorney services for claims relating to the SCR program. Each one of these was Southern California Relief approved attorney services for claims for the Southern California Relief program. The only one that wasn't approved back in June was the one for Artiano Shinoff, and that's because it was pulled from the agenda because of issues of conflict of interest. So it looks like this is an attempt to approve the Artiano Shinoff contract, given the fact that the contract's on the purchase order that follows this agenda item, without giving Artiano Shinoff a direct, entering into a direct contract with that law firm. I don't believe that we can do that as a district. We need to have a direct contract. We need to make sure that their liability insurance is compliant especially a firm like this that recently suffered a $2 million malpractice lawsuit.
Perhaps our risk manager, Mr. Wilson, could speak to the way that the JPA is set up. But my understanding is, again, that the attorneys are appointed to us by the JPA and through the JPA. So as far as I have seen, we haven't had independent contracts with the attorneys on this list. Do you have anything to add to that, Mr. Wilson?
Great, thank you. In terms of the contract we entered into with SCR, Southern California Relief, that is our insurance. And as part of that service, they provide us with a panel of attorneys available to us to represent us in various matters. Therefore, when we have litigation, we then contract or pay directly to. We don't enter into a contract with the attorneys' firms. The contracts are organized by Southern California Relief, at which time we then pay the firms directly that provide services. And I believe if this is the $2 million amendment, there was also a recalibration or recalculation of our annual premium, which the board approved the premium back in June. However, Southern California Relief, as an entity, they serve multiple districts, had covered several large losses in other school districts. So therefore, in and around May, there was a recalculation of the premium, which resulted in additional billing.
Respectfully, I've been here 6 years, and we've always had the contracts with directly. We've entered into a contractual arrangement with the Southern California Relief approved law firms. We just did that in June. I know you weren't here in June, but I have the contractual services report where we have a list of 4 pre-approved law firms where the district entered into contracts directly with the Southern California Relief law firms. So we did it with 4 firms. There was a 5th firm on the list. That firm was removed from the docket. So it looks like this is an end run around entering into a direct contract with that firm.
There's no contract, and there's no contract entering into a contract with specific firms around the process, as we do not either vet or select the firms that are provided to us by SCR.
I understand that, but if you would like to look at the contractual services report from just a few months ago, the board entered into individual contracts with those pre-approved law firms.
Mr. Wilson didn't create the CSR, but my team did. None of those, I would argue that none of those firms had individual contracts in the past, and I would argue instead they were misrepresented on the CSR, and that should have been SCR from the beginning. To Mr. Wilson's point, we do not, as far as, and again, I just got into the weeds in this in the last month or two, we do not enter into contracts directly with the attorneys provided through the JPA.
That is correct.
So, Dr. Patel.
So I'm trying to figure out an explanation for this because this seems to be an interesting concern. So is it that they should have been listed as Southern California Relief,
yes,
but we knew who was being assigned to us, so we went ahead and listed it the other way?
That's correct.
And in this case, this $25,000 is actually for a premium increase?
No, this $25,000, as I mentioned, is for Shinoff, which is on the PO list.
Okay.
That is on tonight's agenda as well.
Okay.
So in the past, for each of the other 4 attorney firms that Trustee Beatty refers to, they should have also been listed on the CSR as under SCR, okay, but then the POs should have been in the name of the legal firm.
So going forward, we'll only see the JPA?
That's correct.
So this is now a course correction?
That's correct.
Okay.
Exactly. Thank you.
But the bills go directly to the law firm, and this would be akin to having health insurance. And you don't pay the insurance company for your doctor's services. The doctor bills you, and you pay the bill to the doctor.
Correct, as they
So
provide the services
same
directly.
with the lawyers.
Correct. And so we are provided with a panel of attorneys that are pre-approved. They enter into contracts with SCR. However, when they deliver services, then we pay for those services directly. So it's a service that SCR provides is by vetting and approving attorneys' firms for us to use.
Yeah, up until the first $50,000 we're paying for.
Correct.
And obviously there's an interest of SCR to track it to make sure they know when they're on the hook.
Right, but since we're on the hook for the first 50,000, that's a contractual arrangement directly between Poway Unified and
It's
the,
not.
and
It's
the law
an
firm.
arrangement through the JPA.
So I think the analogy is best served as when you have an insurance claim, if you're in an automobile accident and you pay directly to the garage that's paying once you hit your deductible, which is what the $50,000 represents. At that point in time, your insurance takes over the payments. So our deductible, for lack of a better term, is that first $50,000 at which we pay the various auto garages for our litigation.
I guess this just brings up a follow-up issue, and that is that when the district approved a contract for Artiano Shinoff in June of 2017, it was stipulated by the board that that contract was only to close out then existing cases. Those then existing cases were the Josephine Harper case and the Physicians Committee, and that was it. So if those cases are ongoing, then it needs to be delineated if this contract is for that. Otherwise, it was by unanimous agreement, the board determined that it would discontinue utilization of the services of this particular firm.
That may have been the case directly, but in this instance, what I'm hearing is that these were services provided, costs incurred to the district, and that we're responsible for up to the first $50,000. I'd like to move the item if there's going to be additional conversation. Is there a motion for approval?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further conversation?
I think this brings us to the next issue, in that if any part of this contract is going towards Mr. Zane and Ms. O'Connor Radcliffe's legal defense, then by board policy and by law, specifically Penal Code 424, those board members are required to recuse themselves, as it would be a conflict of interest to vote on a matter in which they directly financially have an interest.
Mr. Connor Radcliffe.
I was just going to note that we have a legal opinion that says we need not recuse ourselves from any such thing, and you've seen it before.
I have no idea what you're talking about. If you have a legal opinion that's been rendered, I would like to see it.
I'm under the same impression, having read a previous opinion. There could be an argument to be made that if at such point there may be a settlement that needs to be discussed, then potentially at that time we would have to recuse ourselves. But at this point, and as much as Mr. Connor Radcliffe and I have been sued in our official capacity, our employer, the Poway Unified School District, is paying our defense per the terms of our insurance. So I'd like to call the question.
Just to add to that, the board has never approved this litigation, so who authorized your legal defense? Because by law, by Ed Code and Government Code, it's required that the board approve any litigation-related matter in the district. So if this has never been approved, then this provides a further issue to be discussed.
That's not the case. The board only approves the settlement amounts when the conclusion of a lawsuit is reached. The district is obligated by government code to defend any lawsuits against employees or board of trustees. And the amounts to Shinoff is not just for this particular lawsuit. He has done work on other lawsuits.
And if I may speak to that same issue, the decision to defend was not made by the district. It was made by the SCR.
It is, we turn the cases over to the insurance company, and it is up to them to determine which lawsuits that they will decide to defend or not. It is not up to the district nor the board.
Okay, and I just want to, for the record, state that under California Government Code 54957.1, it says the legislative body of a local agency shall publicly report any action taken, including approval given to its legal counsel to defend any form of litigation as a result of a consultation under 54956. So any action to initiate litigation or to defend a legal matter requires board approval. If it hasn't been done, then this board is out of compliance.
Okay, appreciate that. I'd like to call a vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 3-2. Thank you. Brings us to the next item, item 5.3B.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
We have one speaker on this item. It is Chris Garnier.
Good evening. It's been a while since I've seen you guys. 5.3B, line number 91. I guess I'm a little bit behind on the on this discussion here. You might want to start my clock. 5.31B, line number 91, legal expense for Dan Shinoff. Since it's a purchase over $15K, I go back up to 5.3A. It's $25,000 for Dan Shinoff, the same attorney that took good care of our unscrupulous former superintendent. I'm personally suing Michelle O'Connor and TJ Zane for infringement of my First Amendment rights. This has nothing to do with the school district. It has to do with them infringing on my First Amendment rights. And I'm perplexed. Why the district would cover this lawsuit. Please tell me you two are morally and ethically, you're not as morally and ethically vacant to truly not recuse yourself of this. Please tell me that you guys are not going to continue down the same pattern, the same road of unscrupulous, unethical, immoral behavior. This is ridiculous. You're really going to allow the community to pay for your lawsuit, TJ? Michelle? How embarrassed should you be? This is your responsibility. This is your doing, you two. And you think that it's the responsibility of the community to pay for your iniquities, is what I will say, the word that I will use. Shame on you. Shame on you. You should recuse yourselves and let the rest of the board who represents us determine if they want to represent your iniquities and your shortcomings.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any further public comments on that item? All right. Mr.
No.
Sellers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to renew my objections in several capacities here. One, to spending so much as a nickel, putting it in Dan Shinoff's pocket. I agree with Mr. Garnier that I thought we had turned this corner and gone down this road a long time ago, that we weren't going to use this disreputable firm. I also agree with Ms. Beatty in that I don't recall reading a memo that said that you didn't have to recuse yourself from voting on this type of an item. And the third thing that perplexes me, and this is just my summation, is that we're defending this lawsuit. We're supposedly paying to defend this lawsuit because you're board members, and so you were acting in your official capacity, which is what obligates us to defend you. And yet, the argument that's being made is that they were excluded from your site and you assert that you have the right to do this because it's a private site. So I don't understand how, if it's a private site and that's your defense, why is it we're paying to defend you as board members? It's very incongruous to me. I've expressed this dismay before, and I've never really gotten a straight answer. So I can't support paying Dan Shinoff anything, but I also can't support the lawsuit defending you, and I can't support you voting on funding the lawsuit defending you.
Can appreciate your point of view. I think that that's an argument for Mr. Shinoff to make in court, not for us to resolve here on the dais. I can understand why the plaintiff would want to come here and tell us that we shouldn't pay the attorney firm that's been successful in suing his family in the past and is in the process of trying to collect $40,000 owed to the district in legal fees. I can understand that. But at the same time, as lawsuits of this nature continue to come forward, frivolous for lack of a better word, it will continue to cost the district excess dollars, and that's unfortunate. So on this point, I will make a motion to approve. We
I would
can
just
continue
like to
discussion.
add,
We certainly can continue discussion. There's a motion.
Second.
Okay. Further discussion, Ms. Beatty.
Just to add, because I come from it from a different vantage point from Mr. Sellers, and that is that this board, as a public body entrusted with taxpayer dollars, needs to behave not only in an ethical way but a legal way as well. The Penal Code 424, this actually was the criminal code in which Superintendent John Collins was charged multiple counts of criminal offenses. Says each officer of this state, city, town, or district of the state, and every other person charged with this receipt, safekeeping, transfer, or disbursement of public monies, who either without authority of law appropriates the same or any portion thereof to his or her own use, is punishable by imprisonment in the state prison for 2, 3, or 4 years, and is disqualified from holding any office of the state. This is serious business. There's a case, a Supreme Court case in the state called Hubbard. There's a superintendent in Beverly Hills, and he went to prison for this. So this is serious business when you're using taxpayer dollars for and making decisions that directly benefit you. You are required to recuse yourself, and you don't do so at your peril.
Dr. Patel.
So while I agree with that penal code and what happened to that superintendent up in Northern California, that was for use of a car, I believe. It was personal expenses. From what I understand about this case, this is the board members in their official capacity blocking someone who was harassing them on their accounts. And it was harassing. It wasn't related to the content that they were posting or sharing from the district. It wasn't related to anything that was actually being posted. It was the same statement over and over and over again. It also came to me. I chose not to block him. But he was doing it to everybody. So, or not everybody, but 3 of us. And it was very intentional. It was spamming. It was harassing. It wasn't about policy. It wasn't about something that the board was making a decision in. So that's different. And if they were blocking personally, they would be allowed. You can block anybody on your personal account. That's not a big deal. If you're an elected official and you're blocking someone, then you're doing it in your capacity as a board member. And that's, I think, where this defense comes from. Whether I agree with it or not is neither here nor there. I think there's grounds for this, and it's in their official capacity. And the district has to defend itself. That's, I think, a very reasonable thing to do when someone is suing an employee or a member of the board in their capacity. Then the district has an absolute right to defend themselves against those damages. And Shinoff isn't just working on this case, he is collecting on damages lost, on frivolous lawsuits. And we need to get that money back. And as board member Zane said, I think if people stop suing us for frivolous reasons, we might not have to waste this taxpayer money. But we have to do this. As long as we keep getting sued like this, we have to keep defending ourselves. It's sad. So with that, there's a motion and a second. I think we should call the vote.
Actually, I would like to respond to that. Just some point of clarifications. This was in Beverly Hills, not Northern California. The superintendent actually gave a bonus as well as a car allowance to an employee. And because he did it, get this, without the board's approval, he faced prison time. So that's the issue. The issue isn't the substance of this litigation. The issue is the fact that the board has never officially approved this litigation, and that the two members of the board who are directly, integrally involved and have a financial stake in this litigation are not only, they're directing the show. So they have single-handedly approved this litigation and are approving, presumably because I have no idea what's going on with the litigation, they are approving the direction that this case is going without any kind of board oversight. That's the conflict of interest. That's the self-dealing issue that is a violation of this criminal statute.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And part of the reason why you and Mr. Sellers are somewhat in the dark, as was referenced in the last meeting, and there's an unwillingness for the board to share some of the details and some of the invoices with you, is because, I mean, you touched about the importance of dealing ethically, and there's just too much of a concern on the part of the board that you're sharing information with plaintiffs as it relates to this case. So with that, I'm going to call the question on this. There's a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Nay. Nay? Okay. Motion carries 3-2. Thank you. Brings us to item 6.1, Associate Superintendent Jimenez.
We have two speakers on this item. First is Kathy Hughes.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak in front of you. Originally, this was intended for somebody else, but I guess they didn't realize it was going to be showing up tonight. So, as was stated, my name is Kathy Hughes. I've been a PUSD school bus driver now for going into my 21st school year. I'm here tonight to express the gratitude for the school board for approving the recommendation of the Personnel Commission, which raises the pay ranges of the mechanics and school bus drivers in the transportation department, as well as our maintenance and ground workers. Our mechanics service all the school buses, as well as every other school district vehicle in the fleet. We need to attract and attain the best mechanics we can because it directly affects the safety of our students. Every student in our district rides a school bus sometime during their career at PUSD. Some students ride this bus daily to and from school. Other students ride the bus on over 3,000 field trips that we perform each year, whether riding the bus to the pumpkin patch or to 6th grade camp, or as our younger students do, to a cross-country event or band competition. As our older students do, our students are frequently riding the bus. We have an excellent safety and training department that offers training classes for our new drivers 3 times a year. Unfortunately, we lose many of those drivers to neighboring school districts because their salaries are higher. Our school bus drivers drive over 2 million miles per year safely, combined with all the drivers that we have, not individually, transporting our PUSD students. As a district, we need to attract and attain the best drivers. By approving the Personnel Commission's recommendations tonight, we will finally take a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is David Little.
So I hate public speaking with a passion, but this issue is way too important to remain silent. Sorry. My name is David Little. I'm one of the 3 PUSD personnel commissioners and a resident of the district. One of the primary and most important jobs of the commission is to develop and then regularly maintain the classification plan. Unfortunately, for a period of time, we did not fully embrace the maintenance of the plan. However, We corrected this deficiency in early 2017 by developing a plan to review each of the 235 classifications at least once every 6 years, or about 40 per year. As part of the review, staff compares the total compensation of each classification with approximately 15 comparable districts in the area. In this regard, staff had to be told the target for the goal of the comparison. And frankly, I was shocked to learn that the target for this district has used in the past is to be at the median. In other words, the target is for our workers to be paid at 50 percentile rate among our peer districts. I moved into this district 25 years ago, and I've never heard any suggestion that the goal of the PUSD should be to be average. I have always been proud to tell others that I live in PUSD, and frankly, I believe we are one of the best, if not the best, in the state. I certainly was not looking forward to moving into this district and willing to pay substantial Melrose taxes to live in a non-exceptional district. And by the way, I would still be willing to pay the same amount of taxes I pay today, notwithstanding that as of this year, I no longer have Melrose taxes. So I am willing to pay more. And certainly how you pay your employees says a lot about how you value your organization. I work for a company that recently had its 90th anniversary. We have maintained market share over the years by designing and building the very best equipment and solutions. To achieve such results, we have found that selling our company as a great place to work goes only so far. To achieve such results, we have found that we have to hire and retain the best engineers, project managers, etc. And to do this, we have to pay more than the average. And frankly, we have found that there is, as a result of reduced turnovers, paying a higher salary doesn't really increase the savings Paying a higher salary does not really increase the cost much because of the savings based upon the reduced turnover. So although I believe we should shoot for much higher than the average, all this agenda item is asking is for you to approve raising the pay of only 13 out of the 43 classifications that were part of this study, and then only to raise them to the average of our peer districts. Undoubtedly, the budget is tight, but our employees are critical to the success of our students, and half of our peer districts have found a way to pay their employees more than we pay ours. I implore you to pass this action item. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any further public comment? Great. First of all, thank you very much for putting this on the agenda, Mr. Jimenez, and appreciate all the hard work that went into this. I know there's a series of questions, I believe, so Dr. Patel was about to take the mic.
Introduce the item?
I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. You should introduce it. Go ahead and introduce it.
Thank you, President Zane. As we've heard, the Personnel Commission is responsible for periodically reviewing a classification plan for all positions in the classified ranks. This dates back to January 2016, in which the Personnel Commission established a 6-year cycle to complete this. Year 1 included the grounds, facilities, maintenance, transportation, and custodial job series. The Year 1 review was a thorough task of a job analysis for each one of these classifications, review of the duties and responsibilities, and as we've heard, measuring comparable total compensation with neighboring districts here in San Diego County. And that included a look not only at salary wages, but also health and welfare benefits for a total compensation comparison. March 5th, 2018, the Personnel Commission approved the revisions to several of these classification descriptions. They updated classification titles as a result of this, established new classification titles as well, and had recommendations for salary reallocations for the positions that are listed on the green sheet for tonight's item. The board is asked to consider the proposed recommendations for salary grades increases for those in order to attain external as well as internal alignment of our salary schedules for the classifications that are listed on tonight's agenda.
That's it. Thank you.
I have a question.
Ms. Beatty.
Thank you, Mr. Jimenez. Mr. Little referenced that they were requesting this reclassification for 13 of 43 positions. Can you speak to that?
Excuse me. As a result of the review, which included just over 40 classifications in this Year 1, Based on the review of comparable salaries, there were 13 that had a recommendation for an increase to over their current salary range based on that analysis.
So by default, the other ones were, it was determined that those were at an appropriate pay scale based on comparable districts throughout the state?
Yes, that's correct, and it's based on comparable districts within San Diego County.
Thank you.
Dr. Patel.
So I appreciate all the work that the Personnel Commission and Corey Amador and everyone has done on gathering the data for these reclassification studies. And I fully appreciate and realize that we want to be able to recruit and retain the best possible employees for our students and for our community. So I do have a few concerns I'd like to address. One is the approval has taken some time to get to the board. I know these have been going on for a long time. And these salary grades were approved in March, just before the raises were approved. And I'm wondering if you have any idea of what the comparison would look like after the raises. A lot of districts have been giving raises, and some of the raises were bigger than ours, and it might be that the adjustment might go one way or the other if we look at how that is with our raises in place, and it might be worthwhile looking at that. Second of all, from my understanding, the adjustments requested have a over $231,000 ongoing fiscal impact, and they were not included in our budget recently approved. And I'd like to know where the money to fund these adjustments would come from. And going forward, if we do this kind of thing again, I would like for that to be built into the budget if we can possibly anticipate that. I know I'm going long. And then the third question is, was this list created only by that? And are there, to piggyback on what Ms. Beatty said, so it's my understanding that none of the other job categories have any adjustments required. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, that's correct. So those the other job classifications that were part of this year one review did not have recommendations for salary grade increases. However, the custodial series still has not been completed, and the reason for that is that we have been considering possible realignment or restructure of positions at the secondary level versus elementary level.
You say year one review. Are there other year reviews coming?
Yes. So the work for the classifications in the schedule for year two has begun.
Okay.
So that's approximately another 42 to 45 classifications, and then the work will continue year 3, 4, 5, and 6.
So then how was it determined which job categories went into which years? Who set that priority? I wasn't here when all this started, so sorry if I'm going backwards too far.
That's a very good question. So it's my understanding that when the Personnel Commission and staff created the 6-year cycle review, they looked at the last content revision dates for the classifications, how long had it been since those classifications were revised. They looked at the percentage of job families that were reviewed from the total amount of job families. They looked at related confidential supervisory and management classifications within those series, and then finally tried to group them into groups of approximately 40 classifications. So that was the criteria that was used to determine which job classifications would fall into year 1, 2, 3, and so forth.
So it's my understanding that it's not necessarily by priority of which we have the hardest time recruiting and retaining. Not necessarily in that priority system.
Yeah, the information that I've reviewed, I don't believe that may have been a criteria.
Okay.
I'd like to kind of circle back to Dr. Patel's first question, and that is what was proposed here. It doesn't take into consideration the 2.5% raises that were recently approved, and do we know what that would look like with those 2.5% in place?
You're correct in that the review was completed prior to the 2.5% wage increases that became effective July 1st. We don't know what the impact would be based on those raises because not only did Poway Unified School District give a raise effective July 1st, but we suspect comparable districts as well may have. So that would have to be reviewed and quantified if needed.
It would need to be. I've stated before I remain committed to getting this resolved this calendar year. Is that analysis possible to compile ahead of next month's meeting?
We'd have to work with the Personnel Commission and staff to do that analysis. The board, when having salary recommendations, can, as we know, can either approve, reject, or amend. And any amendment would first require the Personnel Commission to chime in and give an opinion, so long as it's not affecting the internal alignment of those classifications in a series. But certainly, we'd have to work with the Personnel Commission if we wanted to complete that work.
Mr. Sellers.
I want to note for the two personnel commissioners who are here, Mr. Little and Mr. Keenigan, I was the one who came before your personnel commission and advocated for the continuation of this salary study, in spite of a request by the administration to suspend it that was supported unilaterally by the board president, acting as the board president at the time. And I want to differentiate this from my vote against the classified workers' 2.5% increase. That was simply an across-the-board feel-good raise that everybody felt they deserved. This is different. This is a targeted, researched analysis of individual job classifications relative to comparable districts. And I agree with Mr. Little. I think the median is a pretty poor bar. But that's what's been set. And I think that you can make this distinction from an across-the-board raise to a specific targeted job-related raise. And so I don't see any needs to wait for the analysis. Everyone's getting the 2.5% anyway. So I think that in particular, we should support this. Like I said, I supported it before the Personnel Commission, I guess about a year ago, when it was an attempt was made to stop it. So I'm going to go ahead and declare my support for this, and I hope that the board will follow suit.
Does somebody else have something to add?
I'll get in there. Thank you. I don't disagree with anything that Ms. Hughes or Mr. Little said. We do need to attract and retain the best mechanics and all our employees. And if this is what we need to do to help that along, as Mr. Little said, we're going to save a lot of money if we can manage to retain some of these employees who, rather than bringing them on and training them and having them go somewhere else, if they stay here. And I think that's really important. I understand the issues about, I understand the objections, not objections, concerns raised. But I think this is too important to wait.
All right. I agree. The number was thrown out earlier, 200 and something thousand.
It's at the bottom of the agenda.
The fiscal impact there,
Yeah.
203. Just one quick follow-up question. Just potentially, how much of a variance potentially could it be? Another 100,000? In terms of, I'm sorry, with factoring in the 2.5%.
Sorry, I'm not following the question.
This is.
Right,
Is that including the 2.5% raise?
Yes, so the 203,000 is based on current salaries with our current employees who are currently in those classifications.
It is active.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. That brings item 6.2, Associate Superintendent Jimenez.
Thank you, President Zane. The board's asked to consider a memorandum of understanding that was negotiated between the Poway School Employees Association, PSCA Unit 1, and the district. And this is for a one-time contribution towards the health and welfare premiums for our medical benefits for our employees in the unit to minimize any significant increases to out-of-pocket expenses as a result of premium increases we have received from our carriers. The MOU for Unit 1 is for a total contribution of $1,124,948, of which $855,000 would be from the general fund and $269,948 would be from the OPEB account for Unit 1.
Thank you, Mr. Jimenez. Is there a motion before we begin discussion?
I think we entertain questions before a motion.
Sure. Go ahead, Ms. Bailey.
Thank you. Mr. Jimenez, the total is approximately $1.5 million. To the question Board Member Patel asked on the previous agenda item, how are we finding the funds? It wasn't part of the budget that we were statutorily required to approve by July 1 of last year. Is this adding to our structural deficit?
So it would not add to our structural deficit because it's a one-time in nature. So in this case, it would come from the reserves.
And are we, is the board going to have to then approve a revised budget based on this expenditure of approximately $1.5 million?
If you approve the expenditure this evening, then we will add it to the next budget revision that you'll see next month.
And was the district required to submit an AB 1200 to the county for this amount, given the fact that it was a collective bargaining agreement that is affecting our bottom line?
We would submit an AB 1200.
It's my understanding the AB 1200 has to come prior to board approval. If that's the case, do we need to wait on that?
I don't know that it has to come before board approval. I would have to double check that. I'm not sure that that's the case.
It normally comes after, because if the board doesn't approve it, then you'd have to resubmit.
In the past, it was a prerequisite. That was my understanding. We just do one for the raises back in May? Can someone check the agenda?
I believe the superintendent is correct. Typically, you submit the AB 1200 after it's approved and the math is done, and after the vote has been taken.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
To approve it, Dr. Patel, second by Ms. Connor-Ratcliffe. Okay, for discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. That brings us to item 6.3, after which we will take a brief break at the request of Ms. Connor-Ratcliffe. Associate Superintendent Jimenez.
Thank you, President Zane. 6.3 is a similar MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, between the district and for Unit 2 for the same purpose, which would be a one-time contribution towards health and welfare premiums. The total for Unit 2, based on the number of employees in the unit who have health and medical benefits, is a total of $374,982, of which $285,000 would be from the general fund and $89,982 from the OPEB account for Unit 2.
Excuse me. Dr. Patel.
Motion to approve.
A motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. O'Connor Radcliffe, a second. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And we will take a, wait, is that it? Yeah, that's it. We'll take a brief break. I'm back in 5 minutes. Welcome back. It is 7:49. We are readjourned. Was that exactly 5 minutes or what? That was great. Good job, everybody. We're going to go right to item 7.1, Associate Superintendent Little.
Yes, thank you, President Zane. Pursuant to Ed Code 42140 in compliance with GASB 75, this evening we present to the board and public the actuarial evaluation for the district's other post-employment benefits program for last fiscal year. This report's for informational purposes only. And this evening we have a representative from NIHART Actuary, Mr. Luis Marijo, consulting actuary, who's going to make a brief presentation and answer any questions. Thank you for coming, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, Board President Zane, Superintendent Kim Films, and esteemed board members. Today I'm here to present the results for the most recent actuarial evaluation. This actuarial evaluation is a requirement due to the fact that you provide health benefits to your retirees, and as such, you have to accrue that liability while they're employed, while they're active, and with the hopes that you accrue that full liability to retirement. So today I'm here to present and provide those liabilities to you, as well as discuss some of the substantial changes to the accounting requirements that have taken place effective this fiscal year end 2018. The biggest impact is going to be that now the fully unfunded liability will hit your balance sheet, whereas in the past that wasn't the case. There was a slower recognition of that fully unfunded liability, and with the hope that you would recognize that full unfunded liability, but at a much slower pace. So GASB 45 was the prior accounting standard. Now it's called GASB 75, and there were like I said, significant changes, with the biggest one being that the total unfunded liability will hit your balance sheet. There have also been other changes, like the discount rate, whereas before the actuary had leeway, or there was more discretion, professional discretion on what that discount rate could be. Now it's set by the GASB 75 standard. So if you're a completely unfunded plan, as is the case currently for the district, you have to follow a 20-year high-grade municipal bond rate. And as of this valuation, that bond rate is 3.3%. The lower the discount rate, the higher the liabilities. Prior to that, the discount rate was 4%. So here on this page, we're reflecting that, again, there was leeway, and if you had assets, you could use the long-term rate of return under the old accounting methods. Now you have to really look at an analysis that will look at, will you have enough assets in the future to really use that discount. So for instance, if you had enough assets in your trust, if you established a trust, at that point, if you have enough assets to pay out future benefit payments, then you can use the full rate of return. If you don't, then you would have to use what is called a blended rate, where you would have to look somewhere between the long-term rate of return on your assets and the municipal bond rate. So there is now it is required to have a funding policy as well. So if you did have assets, you would definitely want to establish some type of funding policy. Now you could have a discretionary funding policy. Of course, there's budget restrictions and decisions that have to go into place. But if you did establish a trust, you could also look at a funding policy, and the funding policy would be looked at as well when we look to the discount rate. The other important component is the cost method. Before we had 6 different actuarial cost methods. The purpose of the cost method is to allocate the liabilities into the past, the present, and the future. In the past, it was simply prorated over service. Now it has to look at it's prorated over salary service. What that means is that it looks at your total salary over your entire working lifetime, and it's prorated by your working salary rather than just service. Again, the balance sheet aspect of it, and then the OPEB expense. Before, you were expensing what was called the annual required contribution. Every year, your active employees are accruing an additional liability, additional service, right? So getting closer to that benefit, that increases the liability, so that increase is part of that cost, as well as just amortizing or paying down the unfunded over some period of time. In terms of your actual plan, there have been no substantial changes in your plan definition. That's due to benefit design, like eligibility, years of service required, the type of benefit that the district is contributing on behalf of retirees. The only actuarial assumption that we changed is it's the medical the medical trend rate, which really looks to what we estimate those future costs to be, and it's just been reset. Over the long run, we expect that to be 5%. Here we're just reflecting what your premiums are as of 2017, primarily just to let you know that the liabilities tracks to the premiums. What the district contribution is it pays for the least expensive plan for medical, dental, and vision, and of course there's a little bit of difference there depending on the bargaining groups. But then in general, that's what the employer contribution is. So if premiums go up significantly, then your contribution would go up significantly based on that least expensive plan. Here we're just giving you current counts of the district. So for this valuation, there are about 3,400 employees that are benefit eligible. What that means is that they're accruing service towards this benefit. It doesn't mean that at this point, if they retired, they'd have benefits. It just means that they're eligible to earn service towards this benefit. Your benefits end at 65. That's why your retirees are pretty consistent, just to let you know. So 400. So as they hit 65, they drop off. There are 4 key components to an actuarial valuation. The first being, of course, the assumptions. One of the very important assumptions is the healthcare trend. The other one is the discount rate. Those are called economic assumptions. And the discount rate really, what we do in evaluation is we estimate what we expect the district to pay out in benefits each year, and then we discount those to today's dollars. So the higher the discount rate is, the lower the liability. The lower the discount rate, the higher the liability. As of June 30th, 18, that discount rate is 3.5. And like I said, the contribution is the least expensive plan up to age 65, and also eligibility and duration can have an impact. In terms of the current balance sheet liability, as of 12/31/17, that liability is $81 million. You can see that the only significant change from the beginning of the year to the end of the year is really the discount rate. And again, there are no assets to be used. I mean, right now currently, because assets are not set aside in a trust, they cannot be used to offset this liability for GASB 75 purposes. In order to meet that, you would have to have an irrevocable trust where the benefits are the contributions are only to be paid out to pay out retiree health benefits. So again, the valuation, what we're trying to do is estimate each year what the cost of the district will be. You can see that in 2018, the pay-go cost would be around $3.5 million, and that goes up to 2032. The gray bars are future retirees, so those are your current active employees and when we expect them to retire. And your current retirees are those current retirees as of 12/31/17 and when we expect them to receive benefits. Sure.
This slide again, or just?
Sure. So these are the
together?
actual. So if in total, what this each bar represents is the total pay-go cost. So each year, what you're expected to pay out in retiree medical benefits. So for instance, in the year 2034, that the amount the district is expected to pay would be $9 million for that year. So again, those would be the premiums that you would pay. The district contribution would have to pay, and that also includes what is called an implicit subsidy. So part of the actuarial valuation is we are required to reflect what is called an implicit subsidy. And what that shows is that when you have actives and retirees blended together, that you're paying one single premium for a retiree and an active employee. But in reality, as we get older, we tend to cost more for healthcare. So we have to value or estimate the true cost of those retirees. So that implicit subsidy is built into these costs.
So if I'm reading it right, from 2034, then the current retirees is about $4 million that is their costing, and then current employees who will be future retirees, then that's $5 million.
That's exactly right.
Future,
yeah.
In set aside now for future costs.
Well, it's what we estimate that year that the district will pay when they retire.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. And in terms of managing risks, again, because the liability is tied to premiums, looking at your premiums, and that can have a substantial impact. Healthcare trends, what is going out in the market? Are you trying to be as cost effective as possible? Cost shifting to retirees, right now you've already done that to some extent where you're paying the least expensive premiums, but there are other avenues where you fix the actual dollar amount, for instance. so that the retiree is really paying the full cost of the increases every year. Again, we're just highlighting some of the changes that can be made. And of course, establishing an OPEB trust. And we'll talk about that. So the benefits of pre-funding in an OPEB trust. Again, the assets that you actually set aside for that OPEB trust can be used to offset the liability on your balance sheet. The idea behind pre-funding is that you're going to earn some type of return on those contributions, and those contributions will then, those earnings will then pay off some of those future benefits. And again, the earlier you start to pre-fund, the idea is that if your investment goals are reached, at some point your future contributions will also be lower. And again, in terms of the discount rate, when you start funding and you do have an established funding policy, for instance, you can set aside a higher use a higher discount rate, which would in turn reduce your liability substantially, as well as the discount rate is a very important assumption. Any questions?
Ms. Beatty.
Does anyone else want to start? Oh, just a quick note on that last one. That last one's, I thought that you weren't allowed. I mean, playing around with that number just seems a little bit of fudging numbers, and I thought that's why you weren't allowed to do that with the discount rate. It was based on the long-term bond.
That's a great question. So in terms of, there are really three components when you set up a trust. There's an investment policy, and that is how much are you going to be allocating towards fixed income, towards equities. So what is your risk appetite? So that is one component. There is a funding policy. Well, how much money are you actually going to deposit into the trust every year? So those are two components. The actuary will help you with the funding policy. The investment advisor, once you set up a trust, would help you with that investment policy. The more aggressive, the higher return is the idea. The higher the return, the more you would earn in the future on those contributions. So that's why when you're setting up a funding policy, you can actually use those long-term rates of return, because in essence, you're trying to that's the goal of the fund. So that's why when you're unfunded, you have to be tied to a high-grade municipal bond rate. When you don't have an established funding policy where the actuary doesn't provide you with the recommended contributions, at that point, you have to use some middle ground between the full long-term rate of return and the municipal bond rate, because you're not really trying to get fully funded over some reasonable period of time. It's just more of a discretionary component that you're just contributing into this fund. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. Thank you. And my main question was the report that's in the board agenda. The presentation is great. However, it is at a very high level. And the report that was provided to us was a lot of number crunching. Sure. And I understand as presented, we have an $81 million unfunded liability, and that's because technically any funds that have been set aside aren't allowed to be counted because they're not in an irrevocable trust. But can we just talk about that money that's set aside? Because I believe when you actually produced that report, you looked at that money, and can you break that down so we can have an understanding of what our underfunded liability actually is?
Well, so in terms of GASB 75, what we're providing with you are the accounting requirements, and the accounting requirements do not allow you to include that money set aside. However, and the reason for that is because then the district has discretion to use those assets for other purposes other than just paying those benefits. In terms of, Mr. Little, do you know what that amount is that has been set aside?
In total, about I think at the end of June 30th, 2018, we had about $8.5 million in Fund 67 that was set aside for OPEB.
So that gives you a sense of how much has been earmarked. However, for these purposes of the balance sheet, the district is not allowed to use them.
Oh, and I understand for the balance sheet, although if we have an earmark and then we immediately approve an irrevocable trust, the funds that are earmarked immediately go into it, and it's locked, I assume. So we have a starting point.
Yes, yeah.
I thought it was higher than. It's only $8 million in total out of $81 million that we need. We only have 10% set aside. Is that?
That's in total what we have.
Okay, I guess I missed when I was those reports it was hard to read those for a layperson. So Okay, so that's really the starting point. I mean, how much we have to initially put in there. We basically are starting with 8 million, so we need another 72 million. How do we get there?
That's another great question. So the way that you would come up with what is called now an actuarially determined contribution or a recommended contribution so that you get funded over some reasonable period of time is, first the district would have to decide how long that period is that they want to get fully funded. That means that their assets equal their liabilities. Is that 15 years? Is that 20 years? Then we would work with the district in coming up with recommended contributions. One component of that is, I don't know if you have the other report, the actual GASB 75 report, but on page 7 of that report.
That's this.
Exactly, yeah. So at the top of that page is called the service cost. You'll see that the service cost is what I have talked about, that accrual, so that additional increase in the liability due for an additional year of service that your employees are earning every year. So the one method to get funded over time is you at least want to pay that accrual of the $5.5 million, plus you want to pay an additional component, which is to pay the unfunded amount. So you want to also pay down the $81 million over some reasonable period of time. That's the 15 to 20 years that you would want to pay that down. And that, if you're looking at that, you'd want to pay about $10 million. So your recommended contribution would be between $9 and $12 million, depending on the discount rate, what funding policy you established. But that gives you a sense in general. So you can think of that $5 million additional component for the unfunded that you would at least pay for over 20 years.
I guess I'm not following where that money's coming from.
Well, that would come from your budget. In terms of, I guess I'm not understanding the question.
In other words, you're saying that we'd have to establish that as a budget priority of ours, and
exactly, that's correct. Yes.
Yeah, the employer.
Yeah.
No,
Mr. Sellers.
I understand exactly what he's saying. The report that we have, there's something of a difference between actually booking the liability versus funding it.
That's exactly right.
And so in terms of booking the liability, we're only about $34 million behind in our liability in terms of it appearing on our books. But funding it, we're 70-some million behind.
Can you explain the distinction?
Well, it's sort of accounting ease, but essentially we have provided some liability on our balance sheet to this point for this liability. We've provided $44 million to this point in liability on our balance sheet. However, the actuarial value of that liability is $78 million. And so the difference that we have to book this year, according to GASB 75, is another $34 million in liability. And the problem is that number's big enough. I mean, $34 million hit to your financial statement is pretty severe, but that's not real money. I mean, the real money is only $8.5 million, and yet the liability is 81 in total. So, what's being conveyed here is that we've got about $9 or $10 million a year that we need to fund for the next 10 years in order to bring the actual balance in our accounts to match the liability that's on our books. And the next presentation about the trust fund is a way to do that. And when he talks about the fact that we can't count any of this toward the liability, that's because none of it's in the trust fund. But even if it's in the trust fund and we get to count it toward our liability, that's still only $8.5 million. It doesn't create any more dollars. It just creates an accounting entry that looks more favorable.
That's exactly right.
To put a finer point on it, if I understand it correctly, it's really $9 to $12 million annually for the next 15 to 20 because it's to go toward funding the liability as well as covering the annual service cost.
That's correct. Yeah. So your service cost will change depending on your current population as new employees come in as well. So as new employees come in, that service cost will get bigger because they're accruing more benefits. However, once you get funded, right, the whole purpose of pre-funding is that you have those earnings that are then offsetting some of those liabilities.
Mr. Little.
I think it's an excellent conversation to have around policy when we get to the point if the board wants to move in the direction of establishing an OPEB trust. sort of what is a acceptable funding level, whether it's 25% or 50%, et cetera, et cetera. What you're going to see in the next presentation is in the trust that we're going to look at, of 550 member agencies, less than a quarter are fully funded, and another quarter are 3/4 funded, and another quarter are half funded, and the bottom quarter are 0 to 25% funded. So it's something that all agencies struggle with, and I think it's the board's prerogative to set the direction and where we want to be in 15 years' time or 20 years' time.
And as I hear these numbers and look at potentially $9 to $12 million annually for the next 15 to 20 years, especially in the context of pretty soon we're going to have accelerated payments on the capital appreciation bonds that'll overlap this 15, 20-year horizon. Rising healthcare costs, as we were hearing earlier, really is going to set up for quite an interesting budget workshop in January. Ms. Beatty, do you have something else?
It's a lot to take in.
Now, just to add, there's no real requirement to fund, but what GASB 75 has done also is split between accounting and funding now, and those are separate goals. So while you have an established liability, you don't necessarily have to do the $9 to $12 million every year. It's really what your budget can take, what the appetite of the budget is as well.
If I could add, to that point, and not to steal the thunder from the next presentation, but with the in the irrevocable trust, the returns are 6 times greater than what we get in the county treasury, right? So over 10 years' time, 20 years' time, that compounded interest adds a great deal to the balance. In 5 years' time, that difference might, on a $10 million investment, is like $4 million in 5 years' time, just that difference. So that's how you sort of pick up the progress exponentially.
Except we need a tenfold increase, a tenfold return in 15 to 20 years. But my question, just like the statewide pension liabilities, or the public employees' pension liabilities, we're required to fully fund these. There must be some sort of standardized protocol as far as how much, is, quote, fully funded, or how much is reasonably funded if it's at 50%, 75%. There's no standard on that?
There's no standard.
Because you would think that
that's
there'd be some sort of, fiscal crisis management issue if you had an unfunded liability of $80 million.
Well, if we think about the accounting standard for the retiree health benefits, it's only occurred over the last 10 to 12 years. So before that, this liability wasn't even accounted for. Then GASB 45 came and did it in a slow mechanism. Now you have now it's kind of getting back to what the pension was. The pension was in a similar fashion. You had employers all across the state that didn't really have any pension liability. GASB 68 comes along, and now they have a substantial liability because now they're reflecting the total unfunded liability. So OPEB is trying to mimic that and be in line with the pension side. In terms of what is recommended, there is no, even on because CalPERS is a state-mandated plan, it's different. So you have employer requirements. Once you join CalPERS, it's a separate requirement. You've contractually obligated to make those contributions. On the OPEB side, you don't really have those contractual obligations. So you can make whatever contributions you want. And as of yet, there is no requirement to pre-fund these OPEB benefits in any specific manner.
Are you saying CalPERS does have a requirement?
Yes, there's an annual required contribution that you have to make.
Is the requirement a certain percentage of your total liability?
So CalPERS has actuaries on staff, and what they do is they estimate those contributions every year, and they provide, or every 2 years, and they provide those liabilities and those required contributions to each employer. Go ahead.
I guess what I'm asking, though, with regard to the in arrears, the unfunded liability, say $81 million, does CalPERS have guidance as far as how much that should be funded at what percentage it should be funded?
There is no guidance on the OPEB side as to what exactly you want to pre-fund.
There is, I think that was set by AB 1469, if I remember correctly, in 2014, where those actuaries can set the rate of contributions for the public agencies, but not more than 0.5% increase annually on the contribution rates for the agencies, I believe.
I think are you referring to PEPRA?
CalPERS on the pension side of things, not on.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Mr. Sellers.
Right, and the references you're making to CalPERS, you are talking about the pension side of it.
Sorry, I am talking about the pension
so
side. Yes.
I think you may be under the impression that if we go into the CalPERS irrevocable trust, that it mandates contributions to keep up with the annual service costs, and that's not the case. Those are still voluntary.
Yeah, that's sorry. So just to delineate that. So what CalPERS is providing you is a trust vehicle. The district, in terms of for OPEB now, we're talking about for OPEB. The district is still responsible for the plan, but what CalPERS is providing you is a Section 115 trust that you can use to deposit to make as an irrevocable trust for OPEB benefits, but you're still responsible for the plan. So it's separate than on the CalPERS pension side. Just wanted to add that.
And as we fund the OPEB account, it brings down the liability.
That's exactly right.
And so this is really, as much as anything, the reason that GASB 75 is here is for disclosure. As a public agency, we need to disclose to the public what it is we owe and what we have set aside to pay for it. And so the reason that we now have to book the full actuarial value of our liability is so that we can tell the public, well, this is what we owe. This is what we're on the hook for. And funding it is a completely separate issue. Obviously, the law hasn't caught up to that side of it yet, but they're trying to get there.
And to that point, is there a standard among either you or among your peers as far as what is advisable with regard to funding?
Well, actuaries will tend to tell you that you want to fund as much as you can to get to a specific point. Obviously, you want to be 100% funded at some point, but we would work with the district in terms of how to get there, what is the risk appetite in terms of the investments. That we wouldn't set, but we would discuss with you how that impacts the liabilities. You would work with CalPERS on the investment advisory side, and they would help you. Now, CalPERS has 3 separate trusts that they'll speak to right now. But again, it really depends. As there's no real guidance, we would get you over some period of time. That doesn't have to be 15, 20. I just threw those out, but it would just depend on what does the district want to start paying down for this? How does it want to start paying down this liability?
And because when you talk about CalPERS, you're talking about the investment side or investment return side, but not the contribution side.
Yes.
Do you speak to, and this is really more policy related, how districts normally get those contributions? You know, from what sources they normally get them. I mean, it doesn't just sort of rain down on us. We have to figure out where to get the money.
That's
and
right.
How to allocate it among all of our stakeholders. And is there, do you have experience with regard to that and other municipalities?
Well, the funding policy is determined by the district. We would provide you with different scenarios on how to that, but we wouldn't really look to where you're getting those sources. That source of money comes from. That would be the district's decision, or where we do not get into those discussions. We simply provide the analysis.
I have a feeling that any more questions might actually spill over into the next presentation anyhow. So I want to move to item 7.2, Associate Superintendent Little.
We did have one speaker relative to item 7.1.
Okay, perfect.
Who requested to speak after the presentation. That's Janet Latang.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. Man, I'm madly taking notes, and I don't know, I'm not going to be able to speak to it cohesively, but I'm going to try my best. Great presentation, thank you. This is great for all of us to know. All of us in the community need to understand what our liabilities are. I have a few questions. Earlier this year, we encouraged early retirement. I just want to bring that forward and say, do we still want to in the future? Maybe look at that policy and see whether it's wise to encourage our employees to retire earlier than the average retirement date that they had in here. For teachers, it was 60.4 for average. Over all the areas, it was 61. So at 61, we're paying for their benefits for 4 years. Anything younger than that, we're paying in addition. So for their family, their spouse. So anyway, for consideration when you guys talk about that for policy, that would be great. Let's see. I'm a bit concerned that on the page 7, the total OPEB liability with the service costs of over $5 million, interest of $2.8 million, and an increase from the beginning liability at 2017 of $73 million and ending at $81 million. That's an increase of 10.5% in liability in 2017. So I just wanted to bring that point to you. Currently, in our current 2018-19 budget, benefits is 15% of our budget, and salaries and benefits together is over 80% of our budget. We don't have a lot of playroom, but we're going to need to create that. And I think just my final note was we might need to look at consideration of trying to balance what's best for our students and what's best for our employees. And you guys have a very important job, and thank you for doing that. And anyway, good luck, but thank you for your consideration. Oh, and I think that we should, the OPEB trust, I'm interested in hearing about what that's going to be too. I think that would be, I'd love to see us trying to put money aside so that we can start getting ahead of this a little bit. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Letang. Associate Superintendent Little.
Yes, thank you, President Zane. Here this evening from CalPERS to speak about their irrevocable OPEB trust is Karen Lookingbill. So I'd invite her up to do a short presentation and answer some questions from the board. Thanks for coming.
Hi, good evening to all of the board members, to the members of the cabinet and members of the public. So I am with the California Employers Retiree Benefit Trust program of CalPERS, and I will actually give more in detail to what Mr. Murillo from NIHART has shared about what really are the impacts of pre-funding. How will it benefit the school district if this is something that you would like to pursue? So the most significant impact of pre-funding is over the long term, it will save the employers money. If you're going to continue with the current funding behavior, which is pay as you go, so every time you pay the retiree healthcare benefits, you take it from your general fund, which means even in future years, every time you pay for these benefits, it will always come from your current or future year operating budget, or from your general fund. So there's no financial commitment to save for future benefit payments. That's why a lot of agencies offering OPEB with huge unfunded liabilities, they're asking, what is an alternative? And one prudent alternative is to do pre-funding through an irrevocable OPEB trust. Because when you pre-fund through an OPEB irrevocable trust, you put your money in a higher yielding investment vehicle. So this investment option will generate significant earnings or return on investment for the employer. And over the long term, through the years, these significant investment earnings will help pay for those bills. So you would really like to get to a point wherein you don't rely or you don't have too much dependence on your general fund to pay for these benefits. Ideally, the portion of the benefits that you pay coming from your general fund will get smaller over time, and then the portion of the benefits that you fund from the investment earnings or the return of investment will get larger. But this is not an overnight solution. It really is a long-tail strategy for any employer. Another impact of pre-funding, which Mr. Murillo has mentioned, is that you are able to use a higher discount rate. So the discount rate is used to determine how much you would have to contribute in order to fully fund the benefits over a period of time. So the higher the discount rate that the actuary will use, the lower your liability that you report on the balance sheets of your financial statements. Also, it really demonstrates prudent financial management. And you can compare the audited financial statements of an agency prior to pre-funding and after they have pre-funded and started making contributions. Because not only do you get the benefit of a higher discount rate, so that reduces the liability, you also have assets in the trust that offsets that already reduced liability, thereby reducing the liability somewhere. So A lot of agencies are looking at this option, and I know that there were a lot of questions regarding funding policy. So the one great thing about OPEB pre-funding is its flexibility. So the agency who decides to establish an irrevocable OPEB trust, they have full control in terms of the contributions, in terms of shaping and dictating the funding policy, because contributions are never required. So you decide the amount as well as the timing or the schedule of your contribution. You can even reverse the flow of cash, meaning you can seek reimbursement or disbursement from your trust account. With the CalPERS OPEB program, you have the option to choose from 3 different investment options or asset allocation strategies. So this is something that the agency will decide on. Also, you get to choose and hire your preferred independent consulting actuary. And with the actuary, you get to maintain local control of some of the assumptions. What are these? It could be the discount rate to be used, depending on the cash flow projections that you are planning to put into the trust, or the disbursements that you are planning to take out of the trust, even the amortization time frame. So it is really up to the agency how soon they want to get to a healthy funded level, or if there are challenges or other priorities that still need to be focused on, then you might want to do a gradual approach. Mr. Little mentioned that we have more than 500 agencies in the trust. Therefore, we have a lot of different investment policies. Majority of them are annual-based or ARC-based, so based on the recommended calculation by the actuary. Some would probably have a lump sum reserve fund set aside. They put it in the trust and then they leave it. Some would have discretionary funds. Whatever is left at the end of the fiscal year or school year, that's the time they make a contribution. But it's really the employer's decision on the funding policy. Now, if, again, an irrevocable trust is something that you would like to pursue and reap its benefits, I'm here to just briefly share with you why we believe that the CalPERS OPEB Trust is the perfect OPEB trust provider for the school district. Number one is our investment management expertise. So your OPEB assets will be managed by the CalPERS Investment Office, and they have investment management expertise of more than 80 years. Also, we are a government entity. We're a public entity just like you. Therefore, we comply 100% with the governmental accounting standards. And you have our full commitment that we provide you data and support when it is the agency's turn to comply with the new accounting standards. In terms of our processes and procedures, we have streamlined them and simplified them, so it's easy for you to join, and it's also requires minimal effort to maintain or to participate. Of course, we offer excellent customer service. You have direct access to the staff all the time. You don't have to call a 1-800 CalPERS number. Just call us directly. And the last but not the least is that we offer the lowest participation fee rate. So this is an affordable program because we are a public agency. We do not retain a profit. Currently, so we have 543 member agencies. We want to show you here that we have a great mix of different employer categories. In terms of the school categories, we have 65. In the county, we have the COE that is part of the trust. We have San Marcos, Unified, Grossmont, Chula Vista. In neighboring counties, we have LA Unified, Santa Ana Unified, Alhambra Unified. And it would be wonderful if we can add the school district to our list of member agencies in the future. We are the largest OPEB trust fund in California in terms of the number of member agencies as well as the total assets that we are managing. I've mentioned earlier that any CERT participating member can have an option to choose which investment option that they would like to invest in or participate in. So we have 3 asset allocation strategies. There you can see it's distinct expected long-term rate of return, as well as the risk and volatility profiles. And you can move from one investment option to another investment option at any time. It doesn't cost you anything if your plans evolve or if your goals have changed. And when you decide to pre-fund through the CalPERS OPIB Trust, then you will have a diversified portfolio. So regardless of the investment option that you will invest in, your money will be invested in these asset classes. And you can see that the level of participation differs depending on your selected strategy. We also measure our performance versus industry standard benchmarks. And you can see that on the second column. Here, what I'd like to, I'm sorry.
Let's go back to the last slide. I just, if you don't mind. Did you have the returns?
Oh, here.
Or is it?
This is the returns. There. Perfect segue. Thank you. So I have here a table of the investment returns of the three strategies versus the benchmark's investment returns. And then you can see the rate of return in 7 different time periods. So as short as a 1-month rate of return, and we go as far back as ITD, or inception to date. So the trust was established in 2007. At that time, SERP Strategy 1 was in place, and we introduced the other 2 strategies in 2011 and 2012. And out of all of these 21 data points, the SERP has outperformed its benchmarks. You will never get these rates of return if you keep your money in your general fund in a low-yielding investment vehicle such as county treasury, LAIF, or money market account. On this slide, on this table, what I'd like to show you would be the experience data of all of the participating agencies in our program. On the left column, you can see the funded level ranges, and then how many agencies are in that funded level range based on their liabilities, the actual accrued liability. So at what Mr. Little has mentioned earlier, that more than 50% of the agencies in our program are really at the beginning of their pre-funding journey. And although there are agencies like 69 you see here that are more than 100% funded, so they could have a large, lump sum contribution, or they probably started early in the program. But we always say that a little, some amount of pre-funding is better than nothing, and pre-funding sooner is much, much better than pre-funding later. I'd like to, again, share with you how much we charge our participating agencies. In terms of the participation, since we are a not-for-profit program, we are a self-funded trust, our fees are based on the member contributions. We charge a very low fee rate of 10 basis points of assets under management. So what it is, if I can simplify it, if you requested us to manage $1 million for 1 straight year, and let's just assume it did not gain or lose, but of course that's not possible. It did not gain or lose in that 1 year, we would have charged you $1,000 for that $1 million. And that is an all-inclusive fee, so that includes program administration fee, it includes investment management fees, custodial fees. There are no other fees on top of that. So there is no fee to join the SERP. There's no fee to terminate the contract. There are no other fees that we charge. Actually, that is my last slide. So if there are questions.
Thank you so much. Would you consider 8 basis points? I don't know.
Unfortunately, I am not able to, not qualified.
Are there other questions? Serious questions?
Right, so where do we go from here? I see it's an information and presentation, so what's the next step?
So staff is looking for direction from the board as far as what your interest is, where do you want to go next, and we're bringing forward information, and I don't know if you want time to think about it, and then we can bring it back, or.
Dr. Patel.
Well, I know that I've been saying kind of offline a lot that having an irrevocable trust is best practice. I think we've heard it many, many times everywhere we go, all the conferences, et cetera. So this is, I'm very appreciative that we've brought this forward. Thank you for doing that. It gives us a lot to think about. I would like to know, no offense to CalPERS, but what are our other options for agencies? And, you know, a red flag went off in my head, too big to fail, all eggs in one basket. You know, is there a concern? So I would like to know what our other options are as well.
Mr. Sellers.
I agree with Dr. Patel. I think an irrevocable trust is sort of a no-brainer. I think once we establish that and figure out who to do it with and which way to go, I think it's incumbent on the next board, the one coming in 2 months, to sit down and have a serious conversation, perhaps at that January budget workshop, and decide how they want to approach systematically dealing with this problem. When I was on the audit committee at the City of San Diego, they made a commitment to fund their ARC and fund the unfunded liability over a period of 20 years. Now, I'm not there anymore. I can only imagine the consternation that GASB 75 is having on them in terms of keeping up with that annual funding liability, but that's just reality. So I think we should move forward with establishing the irrevocable trust, be it with CalPERS or someone else, and so that the new board can be in position to adopt a strategy to try and relieve the liability that exists over a reasonable period of time.
I realize that this GASB change is only a little over a year old at this point, so I appreciate you, and you've been here a little over a year, so I appreciate you bringing this to us, and it is best practices, and I know that we do need to make this change. I don't know, I'm hearing similar things from everyone. I think I'd like to see this come back to us next month with your best recommendation and make it be an action item. Yeah, and again, I think you can put in all the work that we've kind of asked for up here when you give us your best recommendation next month.
Ms. Beatty.
Yes, I'm in agreement with my colleagues. I think this is a no-brainer. You make a powerful case for all the reasons why this is a good idea. So I just wanted to follow up because we didn't ask you any questions. We asked a lot of questions, I did, of our previous presenter. Are there any questions that we asked him that are things you may want to address? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I was just wondering if there's anything that we asked that you wanted to weigh in on.
Well, I know that earlier you mentioned about if there are like any standards that are required that one needs to meet when it comes to recommendation. I will just echo what Mr. Murillo has said. It's because the funding policy is dictated and shaped by the agency that is participating. So it's really up to you if you would like to go on an ARC-based or annual contributions or find another funding or contribution behavior.
And what is ARC-based?
So ARC-based is so the actuary, NIHART, will give you an annual recommended contribution, and based on that annual recommended contribution, you will make contributions to the trust as well. So maybe what I can share with you is experience data from the program. And so majority of the employers, what they do is if they have an ARC, for example, of let's just say $1 million, so what they do is first they pay their PAYGO expenses, the retirement premium payments for that fiscal year, assuming it's $500,000. They pay for that from their general fund, and then the difference between the ARC and what they have paid, they contribute to the trust. So that's the behavior that they do. That's a contribution behavior. But others, it could be a gradual or a phase-in increase of the ARC. If there are financial challenges, they could start with 5% of whatever the ARC is, and then next year make it 10% until eventually they will reach to a level that they are already 100% ARC pre-funding. So it's something that you can, strategize.
Mrs. Connor Ratcliffe.
I'm looking at, I think it's slide number 3. I just want to understand one point on there. It says employer controls the funding policy related to trust contribution, decides if and when to seek reimbursement, eligible to reimburse valid annual OPEB expenses. I want to make sure I understand what that is. Can you clarify?
So first is you can take money out of the trust because, of course, that is the goal, that you have enough earnings in the trust so that will pay for your retiree premium payments. And every year, you can decide to take money out of your trust account up to 100% of your pay-go expenses. So only up to that. So you have a limit, but you are able to take money out of the account.
So that eventually when we get funded close to 100% or wherever we decide to be, we can start, instead of taking it from our general fund, we can start taking it from our
Yes.
OPEB account.
Mhm.
Thank you.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Great. All right.
Well, I think maybe getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but I think I want to weigh in with regard to the strategies. And given where we're probably headed, I'm thinking 2 or 3 is probably either strategy. 2 or 3 is what we want to pick. Maybe 3, starting out with 3. A little starting out conservative. I did have, and I think this may be a question for our staff, and that is, under our fair share model, does this do these contributions come out of that 56%?
It's a good question, and we'll have to think about it and speak with our bargaining units as well. So as you know, we're committed to depositing some in OPEB on their behalf as per contract and MOU language. So of course, those would be contributions that we would put in the trust. The rest we'd have to work with them and massage.
So our next step is that if the board is if this is something the board is interested in us pursuing and looking at, then, which is what it sounds like, our next step is for Ron and James to start meeting with our employee groups to start talking about it, educating them and helping them to understand what this is, and then starting to look at contract language as well.
Just a follow-up question on that. Are you, with regard to the board's approval of the of this irrevocable trust, is that contingent upon these conversations, or can we go ahead and approve moving forward with this irrevocable trust? In other words, is that the board's purview?
I have a related question to that.
It is the board's purview, so we would have to put it on a future board agenda for action, but that does not preclude us from starting to have conversations with them. So we can go ahead and start doing that.
That's pretty much where I was going to head to. I hear unanimity in the notion that we want to move forward with the irrevocable trust. The next step is to identify which trust it is that we want to move forward with. I don't think that we necessarily want to come to some decision either in November or potentially even December as to how much we want to contribute annually until such time as we have that as part of a broader budget conversation.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Little. Brings us to item 7.3. Associate Superintendent Little.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This is our enrollment report for month number 1, ending September 14th, 2018. As you'll note, a lot of interesting activity going on in month number 1 compared to month number 1 of last year. So a decrease in our elementary schools of 251. Middle schools, a decrease of 67, a big increase at our high school level, and an increase in our special ed NPS schools. Overall net, a loss of 123 compared to last year. The good news, of course, is our attendance rate is almost 98%, which is amazing. Yes, and so if we could maintain that, we'd be in good shape. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you. Next item, 8.1, Associate Superintendent Osborne.
Thank you, President Zane. Tonight, we bring forward to the board one stipulated agreement for board action.
Thank you very much. It's a disciplinary matter. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Ms. Connor-Ratcliffe. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Patel. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And actually, let me go back and put that for the record. There is a motion for approval on case number 208-2019.01, and it passed unanimously. Let's just do item 8.2. Ms. Osborne.
Thank you. Tonight, we bring forward one readmission for the board's approval.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion on case number 2017-2018.27?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Mr. Sellers. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Patel. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Let's just do item 9.1. Mr. Mizell.
Thank you, President Zane. Tonight we bring forward the names of the 2018-2019 Special Education Community Advisory Committee. This committee, better known as the CAC, is an advisory body to the special education local plan area to promote effective special education programs and services. The CAC meets regularly, and their partnership is essential to ensuring that we continue to provide appropriate special education services to our students. I see Frida Brunzel and Heather Plotsky have been with us for the last 3 hours. If you two would stand and be recognized. I want to thank you both for sharing your experiences and expertise with us, as well as for your dedication to our school district. I now ask the board to approve the 2018-2019 Special Education Community Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mizell. This is an action item. There is a student preferential vote attached to this. Is there a motion for approval?
Before there's a motion, I have a question.
Sure, Dr.
We
Patel.
all received an email, and I have a printed copy, all the members of the board, that parent Bertha Taylor has resigned from the committee, so we should probably remove her from that approval list. The board received a copy of that email. Do you want me to forward it to you?
Yes, I've never.
Oh, sorry. Maybe I made that assumption. I can forward that to you. And the second is, in that same email, there was a question requesting clarification that Kathy Purcell and Sherry Miller were listed as members, and they were seeking clarification as to whether they should be listed as district liaisons. Greg?
So my recommendation would be that we recognize them as district liaisons.
Just those two, or all 5 of those PUSD employees?
Are the other 3 teachers, or are they all in the district office? I didn't know if there was a distinction between those 3 and the other 2.
I think that the 2 that we're speaking of, Kathy Purcell and Sherry Miller, are district office. I think the others are parents as well as district employees. Is that no? Help me out, Frida. Can you come? Can you come to the...
Frida, would you like to come up?
Come up, please.
Come up to the mic, Frida.
Come on, you're used to it.
You got to be on the record.
Public speaking. So Gina is the parent liaison. Maybe Kathy can. I assume she works at the district office, and then Tiffany King is a. It's better you do this. Yeah.
You can stay there if you want. Here anyway.
I know that Bernard is a school psychologist.
And so, I'm sorry.
She's a program. Tiffany King is a program specialist, isn't it?
Yes, and so part of the CAC voting membership includes 3 district staff members, Bernard Larson, Tiffany King, and Gina Zanolini, and they are part of the voting membership. Sherry Miller and myself, we are district liaison. We're there to go ahead and answer questions, offer support as things come up.
So I would like to add that last year, Sherry Miller and Diane were voting. So, and they were approved as a board. So I was very surprised when I heard that.
Well, it's good we're getting this clarified now. I think this is a good thing we do it up front.
No, and this is a good conversation to have. I did review it with Karen because Sherry and I should be non-voting members. Again, we are there just as liaison to help support if any questions come up. And so there was some discussion whether or not we should be on the board for tonight. But when we looked in past years, we saw that the district liaisons had been added. And so we kept with that practice of adding those names.
But they have always been voting.
Well, and this item says they're appointees. It doesn't distinguish between voting and non-voting, so it doesn't. It seems like we can approve it, and that distinction can be made by the committee itself. Right.
Can I clarify what I just heard then? Are we looking for a motion then to approve these appointees with the exception to cross off Bertha Taylor, Kathy Purcell, and Sherry Miller? Are we looking for that motion?
No. Just, if you can at this time, approve the appointees to serve on the CAC committee until we get verification of whether or not officially Ms. Taylor has resigned, and then we can bring forward an amendment in November if
Board
needed.
members did receive a copy of her letter of resignation from the committee.
Did you receive one? So
It
staff
was
has-
not it was not directed to the board. It was forwarded to the board to somebody else.
So again, if the
From
board can
someone
please just approve the appointees for the CAC, and then if needed, we'll make certain amendments to positions next month.
I'm going to move to approve.
Second. Okay, further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Including the preferential vote. All in favor? Pardon me? Yes. Ms. Beatty made the motion, I made the second. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Item 11.1, Dr. Phelps.
Thank you, President Zane. At the September 13th board meeting and also by email on September 27th to the Superintendent and Board President Zane, Trustee Beatty requested that this item be placed on the October 11th board meeting for tonight's consideration, review, and discussion and action.
Thank you very much. Ms. Beatty?
All right. I'd like to propose that the first item, which is 9124, I'd like to go ahead and table that one. That wasn't a request to revise the policy, but actually to take account of the substance of the policy with regard to retaining legal counsel. And I'd like to go ahead and table that for now.
You want us to bring it back forward in November?
No, just we'll
Table it?
table
Okay.
it for now for good, yeah. And then with regard to 9323, I think I'd like to just throw out a few items that I'm interested in having revised without having the board necessarily take action on it tonight, but perhaps bring back those revisions and any other suggestions. So with regard to 9323, one issue I'd like to bring up is the agenda for the board meetings. The closed session agendas always have a standard format for listing the blanket allowed closed session agenda items. And I think it's confusing to the public to understand what is being discussed and what's not being discussed. So I'd like for the board to consider having us only list the closed session numbers that pertain to the items that the board actually is going to be discussing in closed session. That's the first thing. And then people probably don't have their copies, but under 9323F, there's about a page and a half that is just redundant language. There were some revisions here in this. The board was given this bylaw because there was a revision, and this was, I know, the revision was to add student support services. It was that copy. So when that was done, I think it was prior to last month's board meeting, it caught my attention that there were some redundant pages starting at public comments on 9323F. In dealing with the Brown Act, the title is Public Comments, and then Public Comment on Agenda Items, and then it goes through from number 5 to 6, and it's all just repetitive language from what's listed before. I think this was a mistake because I went back and looked at the markups, and it's not. This isn't contained in the markups.
Do you have a revised that you're going to?
I could pass this down. I sort of scribbled on that one. Oh, let me just check this. Actually, I'll give this to Amanda at the end.
Great, thank you.
Can you clarify redundant from which section? Because I also flagged that, so I'm curious.
Okay, so 9323E starts out with public participation.
Okay.
And then, so that has all the language with regard to members of the public speaking.
So we're in the same spot.
Okay. Okay, so you're in the same place there. I'll,
Was there more on 9323?
let's see. I think that's it. Yeah, that's all. So I'll just I'll leave that for Amanda.
Perfect. Yeah, if we can take that back next month with the revisions on them, that'd be great. Thank you so much. That brings us to item 12.1, board member reports. And we'll start with Mr. Schwartz.
Hello. Oh, let me get this a bit closer. Hello, Poway Unified students, staff, and community members. It's my favorite time of the month. It's been a busy past few weeks. In late September, I had the opportunity to meet with Ms. Peck regarding the brainstormed ideas for my ASB president meeting. I'm happy to say that many of the thoughts I discussed may be implemented in the near future. Some of these include a district-wide fundraiser, a district-wide spirit competition, and amending some of the current food policies. I also got to be a part of my first superintendent advisory council meeting. 20 other students from all PowayUSD high schools and I were taught the basics of Poway Unified, as well as our responsibilities for the upcoming year. It was amazing to see all of the spectacular students I will be working with alongside these next few months. Every year, PowayUSD hosts an awesome event called What I Wish My Parents Knew. In case you are not already familiar, the presentation includes students sharing what they hope their parents and the parents of future students will understand about their complicated, busy lives. I was fortunate enough to be selected as a speaker for one of the breakout sessions where I met some fantastic parents and community members, all of which amazed me with their positivity towards making their children's school a better place. At Westview, I'm also part of the Peer Ambassador Program. This position includes encouraging PowayUSD elementary school students about the importance of character. About once a week, I get to visit elementary school and talk to kids about the opportunity that I have. I'm so thankful for this job because I get to meet some of the many great students in our district, especially at the elementary school level. In between school and my other activities, I was also lucky enough to schedule a meeting with Mr. Little and Mr. Mizell to discuss some concerns I have for the district. With Mr. Mizell, I had the pleasure of discussing subjects of special education, mental health, and counseling. With Mr. Little, I addressed my concerns regarding school food policies. I hope to report some change sprouted from my discussion and the things they brought to their attention. Bullying and bigotry, regardless of how great our district is, will always be a reality. To help combat these issues, I attended the annual ADL No Place for Hate conference. Here I learned about how to best handle hatred and disrespect among students. The lessons I learned are extremely valuable, and I would like to thank Dr. Phelps and Dr. Patel for joining me. Election season is just around the corner. To better educate myself about the potential my future potential colleagues, I attended the Poway Unified School District Board Candidate Forum. And finally, on a personal note, I've been completing the rigorous process of completing college applications. If there are any seniors in the audience, which there definitely are not, but yesterday I actually completed my application and submitted to my dream school, Columbia University, in the city of New York. I look forward to updating you with potential results when I hear back in the near future. Thank you all for attending this meeting. I cannot wait to see what positive change we will make to this district in only a short month until the next meeting. Again, if you ever wish to speak to me, I am more than happy to give you my information. Please never hesitate to ask me questions. I'm here for you and the students. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Connor Ratcliffe.
I want to mention that I had the great pleasure of seeing those Westview High School ambassadors presenting and their their skit on citizenship with the wow, what was the name of the ship now? The citizenship. Oh, yes, that's right. Presenting on citizenship, all of these aliens were getting off of the citizenship, and they're on Earth, and they're checking out the little fifth graders. Oh, it was the preschoolers in front, though, who got the biggest kick out of this. Yeah, they were freaked out. You're right. But it was fantastic to see, and I'm so glad we've got this program at Westview and many of our high schools, in fact, because our elementary kids love it. These are people that they idolize to the point that there's no way they'd get the same reaction if parents were telling them about it or their teachers. They love us, but they think the high school kids are the coolest thing going. So it's a fantastic program. I kind of want to leave this to Dr. Phelps because I know it's there, but last month we talked about our 3 PUSD Teachers of the Year, and now we have a San Diego County Teacher of the Year for the county. Westview's Katie Wu, and at that big red carpet event downtown, it was amazing as always, and though I was a bit underdressed personally without sequins, I'm going to get that right next time, I was very excited to be there to cheer on our 3 nominees, and so excited for Ms. Wu on her win. Let me see, what else have I been up to? There's a lot here. A few weeks ago, I was invited to chat with some 4th graders who were studying local government. They wanted to know what it's like to be on the school board. That was fantastic. They had me sweating a little bit, hard-hitting questions like what time do you have to get up in the morning, things like that. But I hope I did get them a little bit fired up, talking about what it could be like and what kind of an impact they could have if they wanted to apply to be our student board members eventually. So they're coming for you, Jake. Our Special Education Foundation held a restaurant night at Islands that I attended with my family, and I ran into several PUSD families and staff, including Dr. Burks, not quite doctor, almost Dr. Burks, and Director Wen. Oh, she's not here anymore. But many of our schools hold restaurant nights like this throughout the year as part of their fundraising efforts for their foundations or PTAs or whatever, boosters. So I try to be on the lookout for those events and participate when I can. And again, just thank you to Islands. I know many of our schools use them for their restaurant nights, so thanks to them for giving back to our PUSD community. They serve chicken strips, so my family's good to go. Friday Flag at Shoal Creek Elementary was fantastic a few weeks ago. It was the day after Constitution Day, I believe, and Principal Atkins loved showing off not just the college chants by every class, but the highlight was that 5th grade Constitution song, Constitution Day song, and it's got the preamble in it. It was fantastic. Anybody wants to check it out, I have a video on my Facebook page, so check that. At Adobe Bluffs, thanks to our partners at San Diego State's Confucius Institute, they helped bring performers from China, from Xiamen University. So this is our Mandarin immersion school. It was a beautiful, beautiful cultural show to celebrate the Moon Festival, and we were kind of like their dress rehearsal there. They went on to Balboa Park's enormous Moon Festival the next day, but what a treat for our students, and so many parents attended that one too. So that was fantastic to see. Love that partnership. We get so much out of that one. Let's see. Oh, one more thing. We had this amazing free robotics and STEM workshop at Westview High School for first graders through eighth graders. It was led by the students from the high school robotics team there, Option 16. And the president of Option 16, Summer Haas, guided me around, spent 2 hours with me, guiding me around to all the different workshops they were offering, introduced me to all of the other student vice presidents in that club, even did her best to explain to me what the kids were learning. I think they already knew more than I was ever going to know, but it was fascinating. And it was clear from their faces that it was fun, and from the first graders all the way up through those eighth graders, they were having a great time. And as I was shown around, I was thinking about Shayna, who sat here last year, our student board member from RB High, Shayna Mishra. It was one of her passions to close the STEM gender gap. And as I'm looking around there, it was making my heart happy, and I was thinking about her to see how many elementary-aged girls were there at this workshop. Middle school, it was already starting to drop up, but we had a good 50% girls at that elementary level. So we're going to get it, and we're going to close that gap with the help of our current students there. They were fantastic. There's a lot coming up on my calendar before the next board meeting. Westview has homecoming tomorrow. You didn't mention that. What's up? Isn't it tomorrow? Yeah. They're celebrating with their speed painting that's become a tradition, pep rally, and float building, of course. So I thought you were going to talk about that, but I'm going to check out the speed painting pep rally tomorrow because that is always amazing. I'll be there. College and Career Fair is next week, next Wednesday night. I'll be at that. College Bound meeting coming up. We've got, I'm helping out with Los Pen's 5th grade BizTown interviews in the next couple weeks too. I can't wait. There's so much fun going on. Mount Carmel's band tournament's coming, and the election. Don't forget to vote. That's it. Thanks.
Ms. Beatty.
No report.
Mr. Sellers.
I'd love to give you a long, detailed report, but you're all standing between me and my scheduled meetup with the Poway City Council behind the Mainstream Bar and Grill. So I will forego my report for this month.
Sorry, Charles. It looks like I'm going to delay you a bit. Good evening, everyone. I actually appreciate everyone hanging in there for these board reports. It's not just you in the audience here, but there are people who review these at home in their free time, including principals who can't make it to these evenings. So I do think it's an important opportunity for board members to share with the entire PUSD community the various ways board members are supporting district efforts, student efforts, parent efforts throughout the district. And it gives us an opportunity to build our understanding for how our decisions directly impact these same students, families, staff, and community members. Since we last met, I've made the most of several opportunities and even created one of my own. Saturday, September 15th, we all met for the Cock Salute to Teachers, as Board Member O'Connor Ratcliffe mentioned, where 3 of our teachers were in the running for the final. I'm thankful that I took the time out of my busy schedule to attend this in support of our teacher candidates because one of our teachers, Katie Wu, from Westview, was named a County Teacher of the Year. So congratulations to Katie. On September 21st, I met with Director Lou Lewis of the Food and Nutrition Department to get a better understanding of how our food and nutrition program works. We met at the Poway facility, and I learned a lot about how staff is trained, balancing between competitive bids and local sourcing. I'm a big proponent of local sourcing, but there's challenges with that based on competitive bid requirements. How we work with other local organizations to ensure that our most vulnerable students get meals they need. And also how food ingredient regulations control some of the products that we can offer. I'm excited for part 2 of this tour, where I get to see how one of our production kitchens work. Might be Westview since that's the closest one to me, but I'm really excited to see how that all works. On September 27th, I attended the Del Norte Starts with Hello kickoff week kickoff featuring leaders from the Sandy Hook Promise. I met co-founder Nicole Hockley and witnessed firsthand the empowering message that was shared with our students. See someone alone, reach out and help, start with hello. That still rings in my head when I hear it. It's really a powerful message. I attended the Classified Professional Growth Day kickoff where Dr. Steve Regur shared an inspirational message to staff. There were a couple other board members there with me, Board Member O'Connor Ratcliffe and Board Member Zane. The essence of that presentation was basically encouraging employees to find their why. It really goes back to that. He reminded us that it's the people, not the technology, that's the key to personalized learning, and that any adult in the system can be the special, and that's a Lego movie reference, that can help a student overcome a challenge. It doesn't have to be a teacher in the classroom. It could actually be anyone on campus that actually makes a kid feel good about being there. Almost every PUSD secondary and several elementary schools attended this year's No Place for Hate conference on October 4th. It was really powerful to see how many of our schools were there in attendance. We were challenged to confront inherent bias by the opening speaker, Yehuda Webster, and he implored us to not just create safe spaces, but brave spaces where we can perform courageous acts of care. I really am looking forward to hearing updates on how our schools implement No Place for Hate going forward. I know many parents and school sites have been busy too. It's not just us up here on the board. With picture days, parent-teacher conferences, committee meetings, reflection entries, parent organization fund drives, just to name a few. There are days when it seems that our work is never done, and at minimum, certainly, there's never a dull moment. The events I attended over the past month seem to follow a theme, though, confirming that all of this work has profound generational impact and purpose. And I am thankful that all of you there are on this journey with me. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Dr. Patel. That is certainly no understatement. As a parent of 3 kids going to schools in the district at various ages or grades, it has just been tremendously busy. All of the activities, the forms that have to be given in, the checks for this, the checks for that, it's unbelievable. But since the last meeting, and some of this will be a little bit redundant, and some names were dropped. One name that definitely deserves to be dropped is Katie Wu, and congratulations to her, and the other teachers from the district in the recognition at the September 15th Salute to Teachers that I was happy to join staff as well as trustees O'Connor, Ratcliffe, and Patel. Just a few days later, I had the pleasure of attending PSCA's board and membership meeting, got to listen to a number of their concerns and answer questions that they had. On the September 24th, with Ms. O'Connor Ratcliffe, attended the PUSD City of Poway joint subcommittee meeting where with representatives from the City of Poway, we addressed a number of issues dealing with transportation or traffic-related issues. Mr. Purvis was there, gave a great presentation. We also discussed some of our joint use agreements, specifically the Poway Center for Performing Arts, and that's an ongoing conversation. On the 27th, also attended with Dr. Patel, the Sandy Hook Promise starts with Hello National Kickoff at Del Norte High School. A fantastic event. And just the next day, the kickoff or welcome back event for the classified staff, Professional Development Day at Rancho Bernardo High School. And the keynote speaker was great. October 9th, just earlier this week, had the pleasure of attending with Mr. Mizell and Mr. Casson the International School Safety Institute Conference in Carlsbad, where we listened to a number of presenters talk about issues such as threat management, doing some digital investigative techniques, and then I went straight from there right to here and met Mr. Mizell here with the meeting of the district-wide school safety or strategic safety committee subcommittee members to discuss a number of issues, infrastructure related and mental or social and emotional wellness related. Also, I don't remember when, but there was a point sometime this month where it was I was happy to help facilitate connecting up Unite North County with the district in providing food for a number of our food insecure students in the district. So I'm happy to see that project moving forward. And then just a reminder that Red Ribbon Week, where you see us wearing our red ribbons up here, Red Ribbon, Character Counts Weeks, October 22nd through 26th, encouraging all Californians to help build a drug-free communities and participate in drug prevention activities. And so that is my report for this evening. Everyone have a happy Halloween, and remember to vote on Election Day. Thank you. Dr. Phelps.
Thank you, President Zane. We have some student and staff recognitions to report. I encourage you to also please look at the board packet for the full description in 12.2. But in the interest of time, I'd like to highlight just a few. Westview High School's English teacher, as all of you have noted, Katie Wu, was selected as one of 5 San Diego County Teachers of the Year at the Salute to Teachers event last month. This is the 4th year in a row that one of PUSD's teachers have won at the county level. And that's awesome. Represent San Diego County to compete for the California Teacher of the Year, which will be announced later this fall, and we wish her luck. I'm also proud to announce that PUSD has 45 National Merit semifinalists. Our students are now competing for 7,500 National Merit scholarships worth more than $31 million. Super excited. Super smart kids in our district. Our Studio 701 interns are up and running again. This latest group has been expanded to include both video and photography students from across PUSD under the direction of Christine Peck. They were recently spotted filming at the new Abraxas High School Farmers Market, which is held at the first Wednesday of every month here at the district office at our cafe. I'm told that they're working on that story for next month's board meeting. But so I encourage all of you to come to that farmers market and support our students. For this month's piece, they are highlighting the CTE Student Expo that was held at Petco earlier this year. Let's take a moment to watch how PUSD is achieving its mission of college and career readiness.
Through partnerships with local companies like Petco, the Poway Unified School District can expand learning outside of the classroom. Petco recently hosted the annual CTE Student Expo, where students got to showcase their learning. For students studying fire science at Mount Carmel High School, they hope their experience will give them a leg up on the competition as they pursue their future careers. They were among dozens of Poway Unified students who took over the floor at Petco headquarters for the district's annual Career Technical Education Student Expo. Visitors to the expo are often surprised by all the different CTE classes available to students.
And it goes beyond what most people think of when offering CTE in high school. It's not just about auto shop, it's not just about wood shop. There's sports medicine, there's fire professionals, there's Future Farmers of America.
And I think these are fascinating subjects that students should be exposed to. And the expo is a great opportunity to do that.
Being exposed to a wide variety of pathways for students allows them to discover and pursue their passions.
You could just see light bulbs go off, all over the place, and it's like experiencing real life opportunities firsthand. And you see students get super excited about wanting to pursue certain career pathways because of these experiences that they have on the actual jobs.
My goal out of this program is to become most likely a mechanical engineer or a civil engineer.
Andrew Takuna was a member of Rancho Bernardo's award-winning robotics team, which traveled to the world competition for the first time in school history.
This is a momentous occasion for all of us. It's a learning experience, it was an emotional experience, and it was definitely something we're going to carry on for the rest of our lives. We got to see some of the most incredible robots, at least I've ever seen in my life, and I think that innovation and excitement is something we're going to bring back and spread.
While some students express their creativity using the latest technology, others embrace the more classic paintbrush and pencil.
So I'm actually going to attend Lewis and Clark College next year and be studying art and psychology, and I plan to probably become an art therapist so I can help kids with mental health and also apply my art to that.
It really allows students to be more self-aware. I think it allows them to learn about who they are and maybe the direction that they want to go in.
The goal is that Poway Unified students leave college and career ready with in-depth knowledge, real-life skills, and professional connections. For Poway Unified's Excellence in Education series, I'm Damian Henson, Studio 701.
Also, in support of college and career readiness for students, I want to remind you of next week's College and Career Fair at Rancho Bernardo High School on Wednesday, October 17th. Over 100 colleges and vendors will be represented at RB High, along with helpful workshops on financial aid, trades, military, and more. This event is geared specifically to our high school students and their families, but due to limited space, I wanted to thank our volunteers from the Palomar Council and PUSD Foundation for all their hard work in planning this event. Finally, the month of October holds many celebrations and recognitions, including Homecoming, Red Ribbon Week, Dyslexia Awareness, Hispanic and Filipino Heritage, National Custodial Workers Day, National School Lunch Week, just to name a few. So I just want to take this opportunity to acknowledge our team PUSD and all the work that it takes to keep a district this size running and offering all of these wide variety of programs for all of our students. Last week, a large group of our PUSD Poway Unified attended the Anti-Defamation League's No Place for Hate Leadership Conference. And last month, Sandy Hook Promise kicked off our nationwide Start With Hello Week at Del Norte High School. We are making progress, and it will take courage and empathy from adults and children alike to make a lasting positive impact on our school and district culture. That concludes my report.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dr. Phelps. That concludes our agenda for this evening. The next regularly scheduled board meeting will be held on Thursday, November 8th, 2018 at 6 p.m. right here at the Poway Unified School District office. We are now adjourned. It is 9:20.